The story begins with our protagonist being greeted by a supreme being in a strange, ethereal place. She tells him that he has been summoned to Midgard through an otherworlder's summoning spell, and she introduces herself as Lady Nolan. Then almost immediately she apologizes, explaining that he was accidentally caught in a summoning ritual meant for someone else. The protagonist confusedly points out the contradiction. She just welcomed him, yet says his presence here is a mistake. Nolan elaborates, explaining that the Otherworlder's summoning system randomly selects individuals from countless worlds. He was excluded from the list of potential targets, but somehow the system picked him anyway. This revelation leaves the protagonist stunned, and Nolan further clarifies that the summoning spell itself is inherently dangerous. The laws of Earth and Midgard differ so drastically that the act of summoning risks destabilizing Midgard entirely. This danger led to the spell being forbidden, yet a reckless nation still went through with it. Nolan noticed the spell's activation and intervened to minimize the damage, but she couldn't stop it entirely, and she managed to bring him to her domain for now. The protagonist asks if others summoned by the spell are in the same place. Nolan shakes her head, explaining that they were the proper targets and were sent to the Holy Sidonia Empire, where the spell originated. He realizes his summoning was purely accidental and asks her to send him back to his world, but Nolan regretfully admits that this is impossible. She explains that she was furious at the summoners for their recklessness, so she patched things up, ensuring they would never be able to use the spell again. Her explanation grows overly technical, so the protagonist gets overwhelmed and asks for a simpler version. So Nolan bluntly tells him that she's made it impossible for him to return to Earth, and even if it were possible, he no longer has a body waiting for him there. We then see that our protagonist is revealed to be nothing more than a soul in the shape of a fluffy fur ball, leaving him shocked at his lack of physical body. Nolan apologizes, explaining that the summoning blowback caused this, as he wasn't meant to be a target. He frustratedly tells her that an apology won't fix his predicament and demands to know what will happen to him now, so Nolan urges him to give up on his old life and start anew as a resident of Midgard. He hesitantly asks if this means he'll be sent to the Sidonia Empire like the others, and Nolan admits she could send him there. However, she warns that the Sidonia Empire is a difficult and dangerous place, and as an accidental summon, his treatment there would likely be terrible. This disheartens him, but Nolan reassures him, saying she feels responsible for his situation and intends to help him. She reveals her plan to send him to a different nation, one where he can have a better chance, and promises to give him her blessing as compensation. Confused by her words, he listens as she explains that this situation resembles the premise of video games and anime in Japan, and that shit means that being sent to a fantasy world with opportunities for adventure. She enthusiastically claims it'll be exciting for him, though he feels nothing but anxiety. Ignoring his doubts, Nolan asks him to try opening his status window, and to his surprise, it appears when he thinks about it. The window shows he is now 17 years old, and despite being a 40-year-old salaryman in his previous life, he doesn't have a job listed. So Nolan explains that in this world, the concept of a salaryman doesn't exist. Instead, there are combat jobs like swordsman, mage, knight, thief, and hunter, as well as production jobs such as herbalist, alchemist, blacksmith, and carpenter. And since fighting doesn't interest him, he expresses his desire for a production job. So Nolan obliges and grants him a skill suited for production work along with a few other useful starter skills to aid him in his new life. She advises him that by utilizing his skills through practice and effort, he will eventually unlock a formal job title. And with that, she sends him to the continent of Asgard to begin his journey. The protagonist then gets teleported to a serene spot by a pond, where he catches a glimpse of his reflection and thinks he looks pretty hot in his new form. Checking the items Nolan gave him, he finds some food, money, and a knife. Opening his status window, he realizes it might be problematic if people find out he has Nolan's blessing. And that thinking makes him discover that he can conceal his skills, so he hides both his blessing and his item box skill. As he continues exploring his abilities, he notices he also has several magic skills. Like any typical otaku, he decides to try them out. He avoids testing fire magic, worried it might accidentally set the area ablaze. Instead, he starts with earth magic, followed by wind and water magic. Watching the spells in action, he feels a rush of excitement, thinking to himself that this truly is a fantasy world. Determined to learn more, he sets out to find a village. While walking, he stumbles upon a piece of wood and uses his appraisal skill to identify it as Trentwood. This high-quality material comes from a Trent monster and can be used to craft staves, magic items, and spear shafts. Thrilled with the discovery, he uses his blacksmithing skill to shape the wood into a sturdy spear. Observing the rich resources of the area like trint wood, he speculates that the plants might also be unique. And after searching further, he discovers the region is brimming with useful herbs, so he starts gathering as much as he can. But he realizes it won't all fit in his bag, so he stores the excess in his item box, which conveniently has unlimited storage. Suddenly, a girl runs toward him in a panic and hides behind him, and he sees that she's being chased by a massive, ferocious rabbit. He quickly notices how unnaturally large the rabbit is and grabs his spear to defend her. But the girl warns him that the rabbit is carnivorous, making him even more nervous. As the creature leaps at him, he manages to strike it down with his spear, and that shit kills him immediately. Takumi stands in disbelief, amazed that he was able to defeat such a dangerous beast, but this victory earns him a warrior job, even though he doesn't want it. The girl thanks him for saving her, and he asks where she's from. She explains that she's from Board Village and had wandered into the forest while gathering medicinal herbs. He asks if he can accompany her back to the village, and she happily agrees. He feels relieved and smiles, but before they leave she asks if he isn't going to take the horned rabbit with him and mentions that the rabbit is considered quite a delicacy. He quickly stores the rabbit's corpse in his item box, explaining that while it can't hold living things, storing non-living objects like corpses isn't an issue. The girl is amazed at his item box skill and compliments him, and then introduces herself as Molly, and he responds by introducing himself as Takumi. The scene then shifts to the Holy Sidonia Empire, where the three summoned humans find themselves confused about their situation. A cloaked woman then approaches them, welcoming them to a new world. She explains that they have been summoned to use their powers as heroes to save this realm. However, her cryptic explanation only deepens their confusion. She then introduces herself as Elizabeth, the first empress of the Holy Sidonia Empire, and reveals her face. And her expression exudes the air of someone who might suck your damned soul in some dark alley. Then we see that among the three, a girl named Akane suddenly gains a unique skill called Revelation from Lady Nolan. This skill grants her divine insight, instructing her to trust her instincts as they will guide her to the right decisions. Following her instincts, Akane decides not to trust Elizabeth because everything about her appearance screams dangerous. Back in Board Village, Molly's parents warmly thank Takumi for saving their daughter. Her father introduces himself as Banga the Hunter, and her mother is Martha. Takumi asks if it would be all right for him to stay in the village for a while, and they happily agree, mentioning that their village is abundant in herbs and even has a vein of ore nearby, which excites Takumi. Banga then introduces Boban, who stands nearby, as the village blacksmith. Takumi then thanks the villagers for letting him stay, but they inform him there's no inn in the village, but instead they offer to build him a home, which makes him genuinely happy. They show him a plot of land where his house will stand, and Boban gathers the villagers to help with construction. Takumi decides to pitch in as well, using his earth magic to level the ground. The villagers are impressed by his magical skill, but the effort drains a significant amount of his mana, so Banga advises him to conserve his energy and let the rest of them handle the work. Later, Takumi's new home is completed, and he uses his carpentry and blacksmithing skills to craft some basic furniture to make it livable. Feeling settled, he checks his status window and wonders if it's possible to change his warrior job. To his surprise, an option to switch jobs appears, so he excitedly selects Alchemist and Blacksmith as his main jobs and dives into work. Together with Boban, he collects ores of iron, silver, and copper. He even discovers a rare mana-infused material called magic iron ore, deciding to smelt all of it into ingots. Takumi begins with the iron ore, noting that in this world, the process doesn't require a furnace thanks to magic. Using a combination of his alchemy and earth magic, he successfully transforms the raw ore into ingots, but the process consumes a huge amount of mana. But he pushes himself anyway to continue, determined to create as many materials as possible. Later, Molly brings him dinner, only to find that he's collapsed from overexertion. When Takumi regains consciousness, he explains that he pushed himself too hard and drained his mana completely. Martha gives him a sharp lecture for being reckless, and Banga hands him a healing potion, which restores his energy. And from that point on, Martha and Molly check on him regularly to ensure he doesn't overdo it again. Takumi diligently continues his alchemy, refining ores into ingots over several days. And along the way, he manages to extract small quantities of precious metals like gold, lead, tungsten, titanium, and tin. Using these materials, he crafts high-quality utensils and tools, and also his relentless effort causes his alchemist and blacksmith levels to soar. Afterward, we see Takumi honing his smithing skills under Bobon's guidance, assisting him with fire magic during their work. And together they craft a knife, and Bobon proudly declares it his finest creation yet. Takumi's blacksmith level skyrockets to 40, while his alchemist level lags behind at 33, much to his annoyance, as his real goal is to excel as an alchemist. Later, Takumi approaches Banga, asking for some potions so he can try making his own using the herbs he's gathered. Banga agrees but only has basic potions to offer, which Takumi gladly accepts. Soon we see Takumi brewing potions like a mad scientist or an evil witch in a fantasy story. The process reminds him of his childhood, when he would experiment endlessly. Once his potion is complete, he notices its color is different from Banga's and can feel faint mana radiating from it. He deduces this is due to his use of water prepared with water magic and becomes eager to learn more potion recipes. Not stopping there, we later see Takumi chewing on random poisonous plants on purpose, and when he gets poisoned, he heals himself with his heal spell, a painful but effective method to gain resistance to poison and paralysis while leveling up his light magic skill. He notes that this dangerous method is the quickest way to develop such resistance, though it's far from pleasant that thanks to this reckless training, he unlocks purification magic. But just as he reflects on his progress, a massive level 25 armored boar appears before him. Armed with his spear and knife, Takumi prepares to defend himself. The boar then charges and Takumi hurls his knife at it, but the blade bounces off harmlessly. He then desperately strikes with his spear, which shatters into countless pieces. Resorting to spells, he casts Rock Ball and Wind Cutter, but neither has any effect. Frustrated and cornered, Takumi scrambles for a plan, but suddenly he notices movement behind him, and he finds a poison spider lurking nearby. Assuming the worst, he prepares for another fight, only to realize the spider is injured, and before he can react, the boar charges again. So Takumi braces for impact, but the spider unexpectedly comes to his aid, blinding the boar and causing it to miss its attack. Though the boar is disoriented, Takumi remains at a loss on how to finish it. But in a flash of inspiration, he uses his alchemical decomposition skill, and the spell dissolves the armored boar from within, defeating it completely. As the boar falls, Takumi gains martial arts and magic combat skills, leaving him in disbelief that his crafting magic saved him. Takumi then checks on the poison spider, noticing it's on the verge of death. Grateful for its help, he thanks the spider, assuming it risked itself to save him. Using his heal spell, he restores the spider's strength and prepares to leave, thinking everything is fine now. However, a notification suddenly pops up, informing him that he contained the spider. Surprised by the option, he hesitates, but when the spider looks at him with its shiny hopeful 8 eyes, makes it impossible for Takumi to walk away. He asks if it wants to join him, and upon agreeing, he tames it, unlocking a telepathic connection. He then curiously asks if it already has a name, but it doesn't. Noticing the maple leaf-like pattern on its back, he names it Maple, and as soon as the spider accepts the name, it evolves into a killer spider, and even its severed leg regenerates. Later, Takumi returns to the village, proudly showing the massive armored boar he defeated. The villagers are stunned, amazed he managed to slay such a formidable beast alone. Molly, however, quickly notices the large spider perched on his back. Alarm spreads among the villagers, but Takumi reassures them, explaining that Maple is a tamed monster. Banga is floored, remarking that taming insect-type monsters is almost unheard of. Not wanting to linger on the subject, Takumi redirects their attention to the boar, suggesting they focus on preparing it for a feast. The villagers are shocked at his generosity in sharing such a valuable catch, but he shrugs it off, happy to share. Soon the entire village gathers for a celebratory feast. While they eat, Banga hands Takumi the boar's fangs and leftover hide, explaining that these items can fetch a good price in a big city. Takumi curiously asks about the nearest city, and Banga tells him it's a place called Bolton. Then we see Maple playing with the village children, endearing herself to the community. Watching the lively scene, Bobon remarks that the village has become brighter and more cheerful since Takumi's arrival. Banga agrees but reflects that Takumi doesn't seem like the type to settle in a small village forever. Meanwhile, in Midgard, Nolan observes Takumi from afar, pleased to see he's thriving. Another supreme being joins her, asking what Nolan expects from the boy. Nolan feigns ignorance, but the supreme being presses, revealing that she gave Takumi a special body, her blessing, and even sent him a full year into the past before the Holy Sidonia Empire's summoning spell was activated. Nolan dismisses the notion that she has any deeper intentions, but her expression betrays her true thoughts, hinting that she may have a deeper plan for Takumi's future. One morning, Takumi wakes up to find himself tied up in bed, and he immediately knows Maple is behind it. She apologizes, explaining that she's been feeling lonely because Takumi has been so busy lately and just wanted to get his attention. Realizing he's been neglecting her, Takumi admits that work has been consuming all his time, so he decides to take the day off and spend it with Maple, and this simple gesture makes her ecstatic. Just as the two are getting ready to enjoy their day, Martha walks in with Takumi's lunch and immediately notices the awkward situation. To her, it looks like something strange is going on between Takumi and Maple, but Takumi insists that it's not what she's imagining. Martha takes his explanation at face value but can't help noticing the silky threads Maple has produced. Intrigued, she gets the idea to harvest as much silk as possible from Maple, seeing it as a golden opportunity. Later that day, Martha proudly shows off a shirt she's made from the spider silk, and the ladies in the village are going wild over its texture and quality. Takumi, surprised by their enthusiasm, learns that spider silk is considered a rare luxury item, usually only affordable to nobles. Martha, sensing a lucrative opportunity, asks Maple if she can produce more fabric. Maple obliges and eagerly squirts out more silk, but the process is time-consuming, so this means that she won't have time to play with Takumi anymore. Though Takumi is a little disappointed as he has been looking forward to spending the day with her, still he knows he has other responsibilities to tackle, so he's not entirely bothered. It's been about a month since Takumi first arrived in the village, and he's starting to plan his next steps. He intends to head to the city to advance his studies in alchemy, but the thought of saying goodbye to the villagers he's grown close to leaves him hesitant. In the meantime, Takumi decides to visit Boban at the forge to continue practicing blacksmithing. Together they manage to craft a chest plate that fits Takumi perfectly, as well as a pair of sturdy steel-toe boots. Boban, proud of their work, points out that the boots are great for kicking things in a pinch. But Takumi, ever the pacifist, reminds Boban that he has no intention of fighting because he's committed to becoming an alchemist. Just then Banga shows up, pleased to see that Takumi's armor is finally complete, though there's a hint of sadness in his voice. He knows Takumi can't stay in the village forever if he wants to grow his production business, and heading to the city is the logical next step because it's where Takumi can sell more of his goods, access a reliable supply of materials, and truly thrive. Banga then mentions that a trader from Bolton will be passing through the village in a couple of days, and he's already arranged for Takumi to hitch a ride back with him. While they're sad to see him leave, they understand this is for the best, and they encourage Takumi to start preparing for the journey. Grateful for their support, Takumi thanks them and heads back to his house to begin packing. On the way, he bumps into Martha, who's carrying a bucket of meat. He curiously asks what she's up to, and Martha explains that she's on her way to dispose of the innards from a horned rabbit Banga had caught. Apparently, the innards are the most delicious part of the rabbit, but they're also tricky to process safely. And without proper equipment to remove diseases and parasites, they have no choice but to throw the meat away. Takumi, however, has a better idea, and he bends down and uses his purification magic to cleanse the meat, making it safe to eat. Martha is grateful, but also visibly stunned by what she just witnessed. She points out that light magic is incredibly rare in this world, and if people found out Takumi could use it, it would likely attract a lot of unwanted attention, so she advises him to keep this ability a secret when he leaves the village. Acknowledging her warning, Takumi promises to be cautious, but while he's still here, he plans to use every bit of his power to improve the villagers' lives. And over the next couple of days, he gets to work, using earth magic to construct a sturdy brick wall to enhance the village's defenses. For convenience, he builds a water pump and even adds a few other amenities to make life easier. And by the time he's finished, the village looks completely transformed. So when the merchant from Bolton finally arrives, he's so astonished by the improvements that he barely recognizes the place. Banga then steps forward to greet Pepek the trader, and after finalizing a trade deal, Takumi walks up, ready to depart. Pepek, who's already heard a great deal about Takumi from Banga, introduces himself, and everyone confirms if Takumi has everything he needs. Takumi assures them that he hasn't forgotten a thing, but there's one last gesture he wants to make before leaving. He reaches into his bag and hands Banga a potion, and then explains that he already left about 100 similar bottles at Banga's house and urges him to use them in case of emergencies to heal any injuries. Pepek, noticing the potion, asks for a closer look and is stunned by its quality because it's undoubtedly a high-level potion. However, Takumi seems oblivious to just how valuable his creation is. Soon, the rest of the villagers gathered to bid Takumi farewell, and Papek kindly offers to wait until everyone has said their goodbyes. Molly then waves goodbye to Maple, who's cozily sleeping in Takumi's sack, and Martha hands Takumi an outfit made from Maple's silk, a collaborative gift from the village ladies. Touched by their thoughtfulness, Takumi thanks everyone for their kindness, especially considering how short a time he's been in their village. He then steps into the carriage, and the villagers give him an enthusiastic send-off, assuring him that he will always be welcome in their home. As the carriage heads toward Bolton, Papek comments on how deeply the villagers seem to care for Takumi. Even the others in the carriage remark on the heartfelt farewell, noting that Takumi was more like family to the villagers than a guest, to the degree that the sincerity of the goodbye tugs at Heath's heartstrings. Speaking of which, the blonde man introduces himself as Heath, while the redhead is Real, and the gloomy-looking man is Boger. They explain that they're part of Lion Fang, a C-rank adventurer party currently serving as Papek's bodyguards. However, they admit there isn't much for them to do in this peaceful region, making the assignment more of a routine journey than a dangerous mission. Real then notices Takumi clutching his bag tightly and curiously asks if something precious is inside, and Takumi casually answers that his pet killer spider Maple is sleeping in there. The group is stunned that Takumi managed to tame a killer spider, prompting Real to ask if he can see it. However, his creepy demeanor makes Maple headbutt him square in the face, and that makes Takumi immediately start apologizing for Maple's behavior, but the others assure him there's no need because Real totally deserved it. Heath even jokes that Maple might develop a fear of all humans after meeting Real, though that's clearly not the case because Maple seems to have taken a liking to Boger. And as the group continues fawning over Maple, Papek calls Takumi to the front of the carriage to discuss the potion he saw earlier, and he asks if Takumi has any more in stock and expresses interest in buying some. Takumi is open to the idea, but before the conversation can go further, one of the horses suddenly halts, signaling trouble ahead. A horde of goblins has surrounded the carriage, preparing to attack. The group knows this is bad news, but instead of panicking, they seem excited about the chance to finally see some action. They tell Takumi and Papek to stay put while they handle the situation. With roughly 20 goblins in the field, the adventurers step out, confident they can take them all. Real then fires arrows from his bow with precision, while Boger and Heath crush goblins left and right with their mace and axe. The fight is over quickly, and the group begins dissecting the goblins to harvest their magic stones. Maple observes the chaos with interest, clearly warming up to Boger but maintaining her disdain for Real and indifference toward Heath. After the skirmish, everyone piles back into the carriage, and the journey continues for another 3 days. When they finally arrive in Bolton, the members of Lion Fang head straight to the Adventurers Guild to report the success of their bodyguard mission. Takumi tags along, as he needs to register with the guild if he plans to stay in the city. Ideally, he would have joined the Alchemist Guild, but since Bolton doesn't have one, becoming an adventurer is his only option. The receptionist Hans explains to Takumi that the Adventurer Guild card can serve as his identification. As long as he completes at least one simple quest per month, the card won't expire. With this knowledge, Takumi proceeds to register as an adventurer and introduces Maple as his pet, finalizing all the paperwork. With his registration done, Takumi heads to Papek's trading company to negotiate a deal for his potions. He reveals that he has about 103 potions in stock, each of exceptionally high quality. Papek is impressed and offers 10 silver coins per healing and stamina potion and 50 silver coins per mana potion. Takumi quickly calculates that this deal would net him over 7 million yen in equivalent value. Shocked by the amount, he feels it's too much money, but Papek reassures him that this is fair, adding that Takumi could earn even more if he established a solid reputation as a potion producer. Papek, aware of Takumi's plans to become a producer in the city, advises him to find a home with an attached workshop for efficiency. Takumi realizes he hadn't even thought about housing yet, so to help him out, Papek calls over his assistant Thomas and asks him to show Takumi a suitable property at an affordable price. Then when Takumi finally sees the property, it looks more like a grand mansion than a simple house. Feeling overwhelmed, he doubts he can afford such a luxurious place. Thomas, however, assures him that the mansion is surprisingly affordable and even guarantees that it's ghost-free, eliminating any unnecessary worries. Takumi then notices the spacious workshop attached to the mansion, which makes it incredibly convenient for his work. Realizing the long-term benefits and knowing he has enough funds from the potion deal, Takumi decides to go for it, and after a moment of deliberation, he tells Thomas with newfound confidence that he'll take the mansion. Thomas is delighted to hear Takumi's decision and assures him he'll be in the paperwork immediately, and he tells Takumi he can move in as early as tomorrow. As they walk through the city streets, Takumi catches a foul stench in the air. Noticing Takumi's discomfort, Thomas explains that the unpleasant odor comes from the city sewers. While the wealthy use magical purifiers to clean their sewage, the main city sewers lack this luxury due to the rarity and expense of magical purifiers, which are typically found only in ancient ruins or dungeons, and occasionally priests are hired to manually purify the sewers with magic, but most of the time they remain filthy. The next day, Takumi and Maple settle into their new house, and Takumi immediately starts brainstorming a solution to the sewer issue. He visits Papek's company to acquire some quartz and clay. Using magic, he shapes the materials and combines fire magic with space-time magic to bake them efficiently. The process is exhausting, and after depleting his mana reserves, Takumi has to drink a couple of mana potions to recover. Despite the effort, his work pays off because he successfully creates a modern toilet. Not long after, Takumi hears a loud scream from the living room. Rushing to investigate, he finds Papek completely wrapped in Maple's silk. Takumi gets bewildered and demands to know why Maple did this, and Maple innocently explains that she thought Papek would find it fun. To her credit, the silk is so comforting that it put Papek to sleep, but the sudden swaddling was definitely alarming. Takumi profusely apologizes for Maple's behavior, but Papek reassures him that it's fine, though being swaddled out of nowhere did give him quite a scare, so he asks to use Takumi's restroom because he needs to shake it off. Moments later, Papek emerges from the restroom with wide eyes, demanding to know what the marvel of technology inside is. Takumi casually explains that it's a toilet he invented. He fitted it with a magical purification device, which automatically cleans itself after use. Essentially, once someone uses it, the device employs purification magic to break down waste into inorganic materials, which are then flushed away. Papek is amazed, marveling at the ingenuity, but he quickly realizes that creating such a device would require someone with a rare aptitude for light magic. Takumi immediately realizes he may have messed up, remembering Martha's strict warning not to use his light magic openly. Worried about the potential fallout, he pleads with Papek to keep this a secret. Papek, understanding the gravity of the situation, promises not to tell anyone. However, he's absolutely adamant about one thing: he needs those toilets, and he boldly asks if Takumi can make 100 of them. Takumi hesitates, knowing how much effort it took to craft just one. But with Papek's relentless insistence, he reluctantly agrees, but under the condition that Papek supplies the necessary raw materials. Papek gets overjoyed and accepts the deal, but points out that it's unreasonable for Takumi to handle the entire workload himself, so he suggests that Takumi should consider getting a slave. The suggestion shocks Takumi, who's firmly against slavery. Papek, however, reasons that if Takumi wants to keep his abilities under wraps, having a bound-to-secrecy slave is the safest option. Light magic is a massive deal, marking someone as chosen by God, and the Church of Divine Light wouldn't take kindly to commoners gaining access to cheap purification methods via Takumi's toilets. The Church, which profits heavily from monopolizing purification magic, would likely try to force Takumi into their fold. But Papek reassures him that he already has a plan to deal with the Church, so Takumi doesn't need to worry about them for now. Papek then emphasizes that keeping the Church in the dark about his light magic is paramount, which is why hiring a slave might be the safest option. But Takumi remains firmly opposed to slavery, vowing to handle the work alone if necessary. But before they can argue further, Takumi's guild card suddenly begins glowing. He curiously checks it and finds a notification requiring him to complete a verification quest to maintain his adventurer status. Realizing he won't have time to handle the toilet production alone, he reluctantly agrees to Papek's suggestion. Papek then takes Takumi to the Mulan Trading Company, assuring him they are the most ethical slave traders available. Then, while Papek goes to negotiate a good deal with the owner, Takumi steps out into the garden, drawn by its beauty. There he notices a stunning elf girl sitting alone on a terrace, and before he can say anything, she spots him and sharply orders him to leave. The scene then shifts to Takumi meeting Mulan, the owner of a slave trading company. Papek introduces Takumi to her, explaining that he's looking for a slave. However, he adds that Takumi is hesitant about using a slave contract, so Takumi reveals that in his homeland, slavery doesn't exist. Mulan nods in understanding and explains that if Takumi makes a contract with a slave, the slave will indeed be bound to him. However, she assures him that in the kingdom of Barkula, the rights of slaves are protected by law. She then outlines the general rights of slaves, and Takumi sums it up, noting that the owner is obligated to provide food, clothing, and shelter. Additionally, both the owner and the slave are strictly forbidden from causing life-threatening harm to one another, and the slave is prohibited from sharing any personal information about their owner with others. Takumi reflects that this system is different from what he had imagined. Mulan then explains the common types of contracts. Slaves who enter servitude due to debt remain bound until their debt is fully repaid. Criminals can choose contracts as a form of rehabilitation and to earn a livelihood. Prisoners of war may accept contracts to secure a place to live. However, she adds that some people are captured and forced into slavery illegally, a sad reality that occurs all too often. Pepek then suggests that a war slave might suit Takumi best since they can only be freed with their master's permission. Mulan asks why, curious about his preference, so Pepek explains that Takumi is a producer with exceptional skills that are impossible for others to replicate. Mulan, however, wants to hear the reason directly from Takumi, so he explains that his primary goal is to focus on his work. However, he also has responsibilities, including completing Adventurers Guild quests and managing daily tasks. He also mentions that he needs someone to manage the mansion where he's currently living and handle the housework. Furthermore, Takumi possesses many confidential skills, which could draw unwanted attention. Takumi also adds that he often ventures into dangerous areas to gather materials, so it would be ideal to contract someone who could protect him and assist during all that stuff. Hearing Takumi's requirements, Mulan realizes he needs 2 slaves. She summons a girl named Maria, introducing her to Takumi. Mulan then explains that Maria was kidnapped by bandits as a child and has no surviving family. Over the years, she has been trained in reading, writing, calculations, and general housekeeping. She then informs Maria of Takumi's needs, emphasizing that he requires someone to manage his mansion. Takumi then outlines the layout of his mansion, describing the number of rooms, and asks if she can handle it alone. Maria confidently states that she can manage it, and Takumi is relieved to hear this. Noticing his hesitation, Maria asks if something is wrong. Takumi admits that he's surprised someone as cute as her hasn't already been chosen by someone else. Embarrassed by the compliment, Maria blushes. Takumi quickly apologizes, worried that his comment might have been inappropriate, but Maria assures him it's fine, explaining that her skills are limited to general housekeeping. Takumi assures her that housekeeping is all he needs, but Maria hesitates, appearing uneasy. When he asks what's wrong, she shyly clarifies that she won't be sharing his bed. Takumi is surprised and quickly clarifies that such an arrangement isn't what he's looking for. He reassures her that his sole interest is her ability to manage the household. Maria feels relieved and agrees, so Mulan decides to proceed with their contract. Mulan then informs Takumi that she currently doesn't have any war slaves suited for combat. However, Maria mentions someone named Sophia. Mulan immediately tells her to stop speaking out of turn and instructs her to return to her room to gather her belongings. After Maria leaves, Takumi curiously asks who Sophia is, so Mulan explains that Sophia is a war slave, but she has certain problems. Hearing this, Takumi grows intrigued and feels a strong urge not to ignore this situation. He wonders if it's his intuition skill guiding him, but he decides to trust the feeling and asks Mulan if he can meet Sophia. Mulan agrees and leads him to where Sophia is kept. Mulan then explains that Sophia was captured during the war between the Kingdom of Triaria and the Kingdom of Yugger 50 years ago. Takumi is stunned by the time frame and asks for more details. So Mulan reveals that Yugger was a nation of elves, and for various reasons, Sophia has remained uncontracted ever since. Takumi curiously asks what those reasons are, so Mulan explains that Sophia's left ear has been sliced off, and her right hand and left leg have impaired movement. While her impairments don't interfere with daily life, they make combat nearly impossible. Additionally, her elemental magic and sprite magic have been sealed, and she is likely under a curse. These significant limitations make her unfit as a main combatant, which is why no one has taken her. Takumi then asks to speak with Sophia alone, so Mulan agrees and steps out of the room. As Takumi examines Sophia more closely, she tells him plainly that she won't be of any use to him, but Takumi checks her stats anyway using his skill, and to his surprise, her stats are incredibly high, though each one has been reduced by 100 points due to her injuries. Her mana is also completely inaccessible because of the curse, but Takumi realizes her potential and thinks that he can heal her injuries and lift the curse. Mulan then returns to the room and asks Takumi what he plans to do, and without hesitation, he tells her he wants to form a contract with Sophia. Sophia, still doubtful, reminds him that she can't fight, but Takumi simply replies that he will fix her. Mulan is skeptical, questioning whether Takumi can actually address the issues that have plagued Sophia for 5 decades. Takumi confidently says he can, and Mulan agrees to let him take Sophia under his care. Sophia remains uncertain and asks if he truly wants her as his slave. Takumi asks if she doesn't want him as her master, but she responds that a slave's wishes don't matter. And with that, Mulan begins the contract process. She casts a spell binding Takumi, Sophia, and Maria into a formal contract. After the contract is sealed, both Sophia and Maria express that they will do their best to serve Takumi. Takumi thanks them and treats them with respect, but Sophia quickly reminds him that they're just slaves and he doesn't need to act so politely. Mulan, observing the interaction, smiles and remarks that they found themselves a good master. Afterward, Takumi arrives at his house, where Maple leaps at him as soon as he opens the door. Startled, Maria and Sophia immediately prepare to fight the killer spider, but Takumi quickly stops them, explaining that Maple is his pet. He then introduces Maple to the two of them and informs Maple that Maria and Sophia will be living with them from now on. Takumi then shows Maria and Sophia to their rooms. Both are surprised to learn they'll have their own separate spaces, hesitant to accept such accommodations. Takumi insists, explaining that the mansion has many unused rooms and it's better to put them to good use. He also informs them that the mansion has a bath they can use anytime. They express gratitude but suggest he go to the bath first. Takumi hasn't decided on his own bathing schedule, so he encourages them to use it freely, assuring them he's installed a device to keep the water clean constantly. Later, we see Maria and Sophia relaxing in the bath. Maria remarks that she never thought Mulan would let Sophia go, as she had refused to sell her to anyone before, no matter how much money was offered. Maria believes this means Mulan must have truly acknowledged Takumi as a worthy master, and she thinks he seems like a kind person as well. Sophia, however, remains skeptical and points out that when she looked at the contract Mulan prepared, most of the entries regarding Takumi were left blank. She believes he might be hiding something, and if so, there must be special circumstances or a reason why sharing that information could cause trouble, and she admits that she doesn't fully understand what he's thinking. When they leave the bath, they discover that Takumi has already prepared dinner. Maria is devastated, insisting this was supposed to be her job. Takumi reassures her, explaining he just wanted to make things easier for their first day. He promises she can take over the work from tomorrow, and Maria asks if she can at least clean up after dinner, to which he agrees. Then we see Sophia is surprised to see Takumi inviting them to eat at the same table as him. When she asks about it, he explains that he doesn't want them to live separately just because they are serving him. He hopes they'll eat with him, as it would make him happy, and they agree, but with a little bit of hesitation. The next day, Takumi collects his order from Papek, who warns him to handle it with care, so Takumi assures him he understands and heads out. On his way back, Takumi spots a church and decides to visit, and inside he finds a statue of Lady Nolan. Offering a prayer, he thanks her for her blessings and mentions hearing that the Holy Empire of Sidonia controls this country's religion, so he curiously asks why she was bad-mouthing Sidonia earlier. To his shock, Lady Nolan suddenly appears before him. Takumi gets startled and asks how this is possible, so she explains that his prayer reached her, which allowed her to call him into her presence briefly. Lady Nolan then answers his question, revealing that she has no connection to Sidonia or its Church of Divine Light. She explains there are two major religions in this world, the Church of Creation, which has always worshipped her, and the Church of Divine Light, which was created later. The latter's god doesn't truly exist, but the Holy Empire of Sidonia used aggressive tactics to spread its influence rapidly, opposing the Church of Creation, so Lady Nolan chose not to intervene, viewing it as a petty human conflict. Takumi then realizes this lack of interference allowed Sidonia to activate its summoning spell, bringing someone like him to this world. Lady Nolan apologizes again, acknowledging the unintended consequences of her inaction. She then offers a disclaimer about her blessing. While parts of it are permanent, others are temporary. As Takumi grows, aspects of the blessing that helped him grow quickly and meet kind people will fade. She simplifies it by saying his tutorial for beginners is nearly over. Soon, he will face more significant challenges, including hitting walls in his growth and encountering individuals with ill intentions. Takumi reflects on her words, realizing that many of the kind people he's met so far were likely a result of the blessing. Accepting that he will need to rely more on himself moving forward, he thanks Lady Nolan one last time and exits the church. The story then jumps forward by 1 year into the future, showing the king of Sidonia asking about the progress of the summoned heroes. He is informed that they are currently training with the knights. The king expresses hope that these heroes will become valuable assets, acknowledging the difficulty of summoning them to this world. The minister notes that the heroes were initially reluctant to help, but thanks to Elizabeth's persuasion, they have become more cooperative. The scene then shifts to Akira and Yamato sparring with the knights. The knights mock their poor performance, highlighting how far they still have to go. Yamato then recalls a humiliating memory from his past, when he was defeated by a freshman during a judo match and ridiculed by everyone. Motivated by that memory, he trains with renewed determination, earning the knights' grudging respect for his grit. Meanwhile, the knights ask Akeni to join in, but she refuses, stating that she's not interested in violence. She then tries to leave, but Elizabeth intercepts her, insisting that this is not about violence but something essential to saving the world. Then Akira steps in dramatically, playing the role of the protective hero, and assures Akeni that she doesn't need to worry because he will protect her. Akeni, unimpressed, ignores his bravado and thinks to herself that Elizabeth is dangerous. The story then transitions back to the present. At Takumi's house, he stumbles through the door, falling face first onto the floor. Maria and Sophia rush to help him, picking up his belongings. But when Sophia reaches for the bag Takumi had collected from Papek, he hurriedly places it into his magic bag. Sophia notices this and becomes suspicious, thinking he must be hiding something. Takumi then excuses himself and heads straight to his workshop. Sophia follows him discreetly, and inside she watches him immerse a knife into a strange liquid and injure his arm with it. Then he immediately heals himself using magic. He then prepares to repeat the process, muttering that Maria really messed up earlier. She misunderstands his words, so she approaches him but falls on him, accusing him of planning something terrible for Maria. Takumi gets confused, but before he can explain, Sophia collapses from exhaustion. Takumi realizes she's overworked and notices an injury on her hand. He attempts to heal her, but the process consumes far more mana than usual, likely due to the curse affecting her. Then, after expending significant effort, he manages to fully heal her, and in doing so, his light magic levels up. Afterward, Takumi carries Sophia to her room and asks Maria if Sophia's collapse happens often. Maria explains that Sophia has fainted from exhaustion before, usually when she moves too suddenly or gets overly excited, and she suspects the cause is the curse affecting Sophia. Determined to help, Takumi begins a healing process, combining his Dispel spell with Extra Heal to treat her condition, and he successfully regenerates Sophia's ear and completes the treatment. Some time later, Sophia wakes up, confused about how she got to her room, so Maria asks if she's feeling alright, and Sophia admits that she feels lighter than ever. But then she quickly recalls her earlier misunderstanding, so she panics and urges Maria to run away, claiming Takumi isn't the man Maria thinks he is. Maria, however, smiles and tells Sophia that Takumi is even better than she imagined. Sophia confusedly demands to know what Maria is talking about, so Maria hands her a mirror, and Sophia stares at her reflection in shock because her ear is back to normal. She also realizes that her magic, which had been sealed for years, has returned. So Maria explains that Takumi cured her. Later, Sophia meets Takumi and asks him about what happened. He explains that earlier he had been cutting and healing himself to level up his light magic so he could properly heal her. Sophia then curiously asks what he meant when he mentioned that Maria had messed up. Takumi clarifies that Maria had mistakenly thrown away some medicinal herbs he'd collected, mistaking them for trash. Sophia, embarrassed by her misunderstanding, then asks why he went to such lengths to help her, especially since it was dangerous for him, and Takumi simply replies that he was keeping his promise. Hearing this, Sophia bursts into tears, deeply moved by his kindness. She then kneels before him and swears her lifelong loyalty, vowing to serve him with unwavering devotion. The next day, we find Takumi in a quiet library, flipping through dusty alchemy books to dig deeper into this world's magic. To his frustration, most of the texts barely scratch the surface of alchemy, leaving him puzzled as to why such a straightforward discipline has faded into obscurity. But after some thought, he concludes that alchemy must be a relic of an ancient magical civilization. Conveniently, Lady Nolan's blessing allows him to understand all languages in this world, making even the most complex alchemy books laughably simple for him to comprehend. Armed with new knowledge, Takumi returns home, where Maria greets him with sandwiches for lunch. As they eat, Maria begins muttering to herself about how heartwarming it was to see Takumi and Sophia reconciling the day before. She sheepishly admits she had been spying on them from behind the curtains because apparently personal privacy is overrated. She gushes about how romantic it was to witness Sophia pledging her loyalty to Takumi, likening it to a knight swearing to protect a princess. Except in this case, Takumi is the princess. Maria and Maple wholeheartedly agree that Takumi makes an adorable princess, much to his utter embarrassment. He can only respond with a cringing smile. Later in the afternoon, Takumi heads outside to work on his production business because today's task involves packaging a bulk order of toilets for Paypek. Aria and Sophia join him, cleaning and packing the goods while Takumi daydreams about breaking free from the monotony of manufacturing. He casually shares his thoughts with Maria and Sophia, confessing his longing to explore the world. He dreams of hunting exotic materials, sampling unique meals, and uncovering hidden ruins. Naturally, he also mentions taking Sophia along as his bodyguard while leaving Maria behind to manage the mansion. Maria, however, is less than thrilled about being left behind, while even the spider Maple gets to tag along, and that's just too much for her to bear. She then hits him with her signature, cute yet manipulative maid look, and predictably, Takumi falls for it. But before deciding, Takumi checks Maria's stats by gently rubbing her face to open her status window, because apparently, that's how status windows work. And to his surprise, her stats are better than expected, suggesting she could handle combat. Impressed, Takumi decides to bring her along on his future adventures, but insists that she trains with Sophia to refine her skills first. With that settled, Takumi starts crafting weapons and armor for Sophia and Maria. When he asks for their preferences, Sophia doesn't hold back. She hands him an extensive, borderline excessive list of her weapon requests and volunteers Maria for a spear, promising to train her personally. Takumi then gathers the necessary materials and gets to work, channeling his alchemy manipulation magic to speed up the process. Meanwhile, Sophia puts Maria through her paces, and Maria quickly discovers that being a battle maid involves a lot more sweat and significantly fewer tea parties. Takumi finishes the weapons in record time, adding personal touches, a wing pattern for Sophia's weapon and a flame motif for Maria's spear. Of course, he goes the extra mile and enchants them with auto repair and attack boosts because, well, why not add a little extra power? As Takumi works, his mind wanders into dangerous territory. He imagines Maria wielding her spear in full maid attire, and his overactive imagination leads to a classic Anon-style nosebleed. To make matters worse, Maria, somehow sensing this moment of unholy admiration through what she calls maid telepathy, claims she can feel someone ogling her sacred plot. Takumi tries to shake it off and focuses on the next task, crafting armor. Naturally, his first instinct is to go full RPG mode and consider making enchanted undergarments instead of practical gear because, let's face it, that seems to be standard in these worlds. But even Takumi realizes this idea crosses too many lines, especially since Maria and Sophia are technically his employees and not participants in his questionable cosplay daydreams. The real challenge, however, is getting their measurements. Asking directly would only earn him a one-way ticket to Pervsville, but Takumi has a solution. With a mischievous grin straight out of a shonen villain's playbook, he uses his alchemy magic to create life-size replicas of Sophia and Maria. He spends a hilariously awkward amount of time staring at these mannequins, particularly at their melons, because professionalism has never been his strong suit. Let's just say Takumi's imagination runs wild as he revels in the fantasy of being the master of his two servants. After several days of work, Takumi finally finishes the armor, which looks nothing like what you'd expect. Sophia gets a simple breastplate, and Maria's armor is basically a red-maid outfit that belongs in a fantasy game. Surprisingly, both girls are thrilled by the design, but Sophia pauses to wonder how Takumi matched their sizes so perfectly without taking measurements. Takumi naturally keeps this a secret because he can't exactly confess his pervy methods after all. With that sorted, the trio heads to the Adventurers Guild so Sophia and Maria can be registered and obtain travel licenses for venturing outside the city. After the girls receive their guild cards, Takumi registers the three of them as a new party and prepares to accept their first quest together. Just as he's about to pick one, a group of D-ranked adventurers approaches, their leader being an overweight thug with an oversized ego. They immediately start picking on the group, telling the girls to dump Takumi and spend their time with someone more deserving than an F-rank loser like him. Takumi doesn't take this insult lightly. Though internally terrified of the fat thug leading the group, he wants to protect his friend's honor. Summoning every ounce of courage, he stands his ground and uses physical enhancement magic to block the thug's attack. However, when the thug's punch connects, his own arm breaks from the impact, leaving Takumi unharmed. Just as things are about to escalate further, the guild master arrives to put a stop to the commotion. However, upon seeing the injured thug, the guild master immediately blames Takumi for the incident, completely unaware that the thug hurt himself trying to attack Takumi. As the guild master scolds Takumi, Sophia, and Maria, the receptionist Hans intervenes, explaining that the white-haired idiot hadn't started the fight and was only defending himself. When Hans addresses the guild master by his title, Takumi's jaw nearly hits the floor. He's shocked to learn that the bald-headed, angry bird-looking man is actually the guild master. Hans formally introduces him as Barak. Ignoring the introduction, Barak sternly orders Hans to heal the thug's broken arm. Afterward, Barak asks Takumi and the girls to follow him. In what feels like an interrogation room, the guild master demands to know what Takumi's deal is. Initially hesitant to reveal his abilities, Takumi is forced to explain when Hans mentions detecting traces of magic at the fight scene. Hearing this, Takumi realizes how sharp Hans' sense skills must be. While admitting to using magic, Takumi clarifies that he didn't cast any spells on the goons from earlier. Instead, he explains that he coated his body with charcoal from his item box. Hans doubts him but becomes convinced when Takumi adds that he synthesized the coal into diamond. Recognizing this as alchemy, Hans recalls that Takumi had initially wanted to join the Alchemist Guild when they first met. Ignoring the magic talk, Barak shifts the conversation to the women in Takumi's party. When Sophia and Maria confirm they're his teammates, Hans suggests promoting Takumi to rank D to deter further harassment from weaklings. Barak agrees, noting it might prevent more skirmishes like the earlier one. However, since Sophia and Maria have just joined the guild that day, Hans proposes assigning them some starter quests to help them rank up quickly. Realizing that climbing the ranks would make them better protectors for their master, the girls eagerly accept. Later that day, the trio heads into the woods to tackle their quests. They've been tasked with 3 jobs: exterminating goblins, dealing with kobolds, and gathering herbs. As they venture into the forest, Maple signals Takumi about goblins hiding in the bushes. Takumi alerts the girls and Sophia charges in, swiftly attacking the goblins. 2 more goblins rush out, but Maple ensnares their legs with her webs, allowing Takumi and Maria to finish them off with well-placed strikes. As they move forward, Takumi grows increasingly uneasy at the sheer number of kobolds and goblins they keep encountering. No matter how many they kill, more seem to appear. Sophia speculates that there's likely an encampment nearby, possibly with a general leading the monsters. The mere mention of a goblin general makes Takumi feel like his bladder might betray him. Sophia doesn't help, casually mentioning that it typically takes 5 rank D adventurer parties to wipe out an encampment with a general. The thought feels impossible to Takumi, but Sophia is confident they can pull it off if they combine their unique magic skills for a surprise attack. While her plan sounds promising, Takumi internally screams, wishing he were anywhere else but here. To make matters worse, Maple suddenly announces that it's about to evolve. Panicked, Takumi immediately opens an emergency portal to his pocket dimension and hurriedly sends Maple into it to avoid any surprises. Pressing on, they finally locate the monsters' camp. Sophia estimates that there are around 300 to 400 enemies. The number alone is enough to make Takumi's legs wobble as he anxiously reconsiders their options. With the enemy's location confirmed, Sophia, Maria, and Takumi raise their tightly clenched fists, activating the magic rings that Takumi gave them before for a coordinated strike. Sophia's powerful wind magic, Maria's massive rock barrage, and Takumi's blazing firestorm combine into a devastating attack, wreaking havoc on the monsters' camp and decimating their numbers. For a brief shining moment, the clueless coward Takumi believes they've won. But his hope shatters when an enormous goblin general and 2 knights emerge from the rubble, and their grotesque appearance sends chills down Takumi's spine. Sophia then charges at the goblin general while leaving the knights to Takumi and Maria, but despite being a coward at heart, Takumi defends himself and uses his fire magic to obliterate one of the goblins. Once the group completes their quests, they return to the guild exhausted. Seeing their haul of magic stones leaves Hans in shock. He can't believe they managed to complete the quest in a single day. Surprised, Hans takes them to the back room to meet the guild master. The guild master is just as stunned as Hans, wondering how they achieved such a feat so quickly. But before he can question them further, Maple enters in her half-human form and slaps the guild master on his bald head before introducing herself. Takumi and Sophia are shocked by her new form, but Maria is delighted and excited to hear Maple speak for the first time. And after that shit, Takumi is promoted to rank E while Sophia and Maria are promoted to rank F. Later, Maria shows Takumi a design for new undergarments for her and Sophia. And when Takumi looks at Maria's initial design, it resembles men's undergarments, and naturally the perv can't let that slide, so he sketches a more feminine design for them. And the moment Maria sees it, her cheeks flush furiously, and she stammers as she begs him to make it. While they talk, Maple informs Takumi that Pepek has arrived. Pepek faints upon seeing Maple's new form, but when he recovers, he tells Takumi that the Lord of Bolton has summoned him to express gratitude for the toilets he made. When Takumi meets the Lord, he is thanked repeatedly for his contributions to the town's sanitation. The Lord's kindness surprises Takumi, who starts to think of him as a good and honorable leader. Later that evening, Maple delivers the finished underwear to the girls. As they hold it up, they marvel at how comfortable it feels and jokingly ask if they can try it on in front of Takumi. This suggestion is enough to make the virgin dimwit freak out entirely. Screaming like a scared little girl, he bolts into his room and slams the door behind him, leaving the girls laughing at his embarrassment and thinking that he is too chicken. The scene then shifts to Takumi putting the final touches on his refrigerators. Maple inspects one with fascination, marveling at the cool air inside. Takumi explains that the fridge is designed to keep food fresh for longer, preventing it from spoiling too quickly. The other girls gather around, enjoying the refreshing breeze, but Takumi warns them not to leave the doors open for too long. He then walks them through the process of how he built the fridge, and Maria, clearly thrilled, thanks him, excited that she can now cook with fresh ingredients whenever she wants. Takumi then asks which color they prefer, and after some discussion, they settle on the blue one. Satisfied, Takumi takes the remaining refrigerators to Pepek, letting him know that he's ready to start his next project. Sophia, curious as ever, wonders if he's inventing something new yet again. However, Takumi tells her that this time, he's thinking about upgrading their equipment. After their recent fight with the Goblin General, he realized that their current gear won't be sufficient for their future journeys. He adds that both his blacksmith and alchemist levels have improved recently, so instead of using magic steel, he plans to work with adamantite and mithril. This surprises Sophia, but she looks forward to seeing what he can create. Afterward, Takumi seeks out Hans to ask where he can find mithril and adamantite. Hans informs him that both are extremely rare ores and that there are no blacksmiths in the city capable of refining them properly. Still, he offers Takumi a list of skilled blacksmiths who live in the area. He also points out that since Takumi is an alchemist, he might be able to synthesize the ores himself. Takumi is surprised by this suggestion, but Hans explains that synthesizing them would be incredibly time-consuming and drain a massive amount of mana. He then suggests a more practical approach, mining the ores directly from a town called Horaz, located northwest of the kingdom of Barcula. However, there's a catch. The mines are restricted, and only members of the Blacksmith Guild are allowed entry. Fortunately, there's a loophole. If Takumi accepts a quest to eliminate the monsters that occasionally appear in the mine, he'll be granted temporary access. This means he could mine the ores while also completing the quest, so Takumi believes that if he does this will mean killing two birds with one stone. The guildmaster then suddenly appears, informing Takumi that Bolton has been experiencing a shortage of Trentwood. He explains that this is due to most adventurers prioritizing black buffalo hunts, which are common around this time of the year. He emphasizes that this is a serious issue and casually points out that the Forest of Death, where Trentwood can be found, happens to be on the way to Horaz. Takumi immediately realizes that the guildmaster is trying to rope him into hunting Trance as well. The guildmaster confirms this assumption and further mentions that hauling back all that Trentwood shouldn't be an issue for Takumi since he has space-time magic. Takumi agrees to take on the task since he also uses Trentwood himself, but the guildmaster isn't finished yet. He brings up a blacksmith who needs to travel to Horaz and requires an escort, once again pushing another mission onto Takumi. At this point, Takumi can't help but think that this guild is absurdly exploitative. The guildmaster then attempts to sweeten the deal, offering Takumi a promotion to rank D if he completes the quest. However, Takumi is skeptical, revealing that he has never taken an escort mission before. He suggests that the Lion Fangs would be better suited for the job, but the guildmaster informs him that they are already occupied with another quest. Accepting his fate, Takumi shifts gears and asks how long the journey to Horaz would take. Hans explains that a standard horse carriage would take about 7 days, whereas a monster horse carriage could make the trip in 4. Understanding the situation, Takumi requests a monster horse carriage, but Hans disappoints him by revealing that they are all currently in use. Just then, Riel enters the room, stating that their party is the one using them. Hans assumes that Riel's group must have completed their quest, but Riel clarifies that they haven't. He is only here to deliver a black buffalo they hunted along the way. He warns the guildmaster that upcoming escort missions will be dangerous due to an increase in advanced species in the forest. However, the guildmaster remains unfazed, remarking that higher risk means higher rewards. Riel shakes his head at the guildmaster's cold attitude and mentions that he will be departing tomorrow morning to rejoin his party. Seeing an opportunity, Takumi offers Riel a place to stay at his house, even telling him he can use the bath, so Riel happily agrees. But before they part ways, Takumi mentions that he has some business to handle first and offers to give Riel his home address and he will catch up to him later. However, Real simply shrugs and says he'll just tag along. The two of them then head to Papek's company, where Papek readily agrees to lend Takumi a monster horse carriage for his mission. In return, he asks Takumi to wholesale some of the ores he mines, to which Takumi agrees. Papek then eagerly shows off the fridge Takumi made, practically begging him to produce more, completely obsessed with the invention. Meanwhile, back at Takumi's house, Sophia is growing anxious. She paces around, worried that her master still hasn't returned home. Thoughts race through her mind, wondering if something bad has happened to him, and she deeply regrets not accompanying him on his excursion. As night falls, Takumi and Real finally make their way back to the mansion, frustrated that they weren't able to find any blacksmiths skilled in working with mithril. Takumi mentions that they managed to visit everyone on the list except for one, as his shop was closed. Just then, they come across a hooded figure blocking their path. Real immediately senses a dangerous aura radiating from the figure and instinctively tries to pull Takumi away, but before they can escape, the figure moves to intercept them with a swift kick to Real's head. To their shock, the hooded person reveals themselves. It's Sophia. Mistaking Real for a kidnapper, she lunges at him with full intent to kill, but Takumi quickly steps in to stop her. After a tense moment, he explains the situation and Sophia immediately apologizes. Real, still shaken, shrugs it off but now has a mountain of questions about Takumi's life. When they finally arrive at the mansion, Real is taken aback by the number of girls living in Takumi's house. He eyes them all suspiciously and wonders what kind of wild life his friend is leading. Takumi casually explains that he needed help around the house, so he bought some slaves. As Real processes this, his attention shifts to Maple, who has now evolved into an Arakan. Excitedly, he asks if she remembers him, only for Maple to glare at him with pure hatred, completely crushing his fragile heart. Real groans about how unfair life is, lamenting that Takumi is surrounded by beautiful women while he remains the only single member of his party. Takumi, trying to console him, reassures him that none of these girls are his girlfriends. So this gives Real a sudden boost of confidence, prompting him to boldly ask both Maria and Sophia out on a date. However, they shut him down immediately, stating that they have dedicated their lives to Takumi. Takumi then just tells him to take a damn bath, and later we see Real pathetically bathing with tears in his eyes. Meanwhile, Takumi and the others gather for a strategy meeting. Sophia agrees with Takumi's plan to take down some trance, mentioning that she is also fine with exterminating monsters in the mine to collect ores. The group reaffirms their commitment to the mission, promising to do their best. Takumi nods, telling them that they will depart in 3 days. With that in mind, he decides that he needs to forge better equipment for his party before they set out. The next morning, Real leaves the mansion, and afterward, Takumi examines the mana-draining sword he obtained from the Goblin Emperor. He discovers that it's made of tungsten carbide, an incredibly hard substance, and realizes that the weapon is far too large to be practical for a human. Deciding to repurpose it, he attempts to melt it down, but the sword resists his efforts. After a great deal of perseverance, he finally manages to forge the massive blade into 2 human-sized swords. Noting that the blade absorbs an opponent's mana to become sharper and stronger, he decides to gift one to Sophia. 3 days later, Takumi and his group prepare to depart for Horace. Papek informs him that the client for the escort mission is already inside the carriage. Introducing himself, Takumi meets Gambo the blacksmith, who will be accompanying them. With everything set, they set off on their journey. Back at the guild master receives urgent news from the Horace Guild that monster activity in the forest has significantly increased. However, he realizes that it's too late to act, as Takumi's party has already left for the Forest of Death. So he hopes they don't run into any advanced species, knowing how dangerous the journey could become. Meanwhile, Takumi and the others continue onward, unaware of the looming threat. Meanwhile, back in the royal capital, a messenger from the palace meets with Papek, expressing gratitude for the toilets he provided to the king. The official informs him that they are considering implementing them throughout the capital, believing this innovation will completely resolve their long-standing sewage problems. Papek is pleased to hear this, but the official then warns him that word of this advancement has spread far, even reaching the Holy Sidonia Empire. Given their reputation, the empire is likely to take action. Fast-forwarding a year into the future, we see that both Yamato and Akira have grown into formidable fighters, impressing those around them with their rapid development. However, Akane remains skeptical of Elizabeth, keeping a watchful eye on her. Returning to Takumi's group, they make a stop near the Forest of Death. Takumi casts a protective barrier around their camp and instructs Gambo to stay inside while they deal with the trance. The scene then shifts to them deep in the Forest of Death, where Takumi asks Sophia how to tell the difference between a tree and a regular tree. Sophia explains that he needs to focus and sense their magic while observing their surroundings. She then points at one, revealing it to be a treant, and Takumi immediately charges at it. It tries to strike him with its roots, but Maple and the others step in to cover him. Seizing the opportunity, he thrusts his spear into the monster, bringing it down and leveling up both his axemanship and logging skills. Thinking these creatures are weak, Takumi assumes this will be an easy task. However, Sophia warns him that they are surrounded and suggests using magic to take them down more efficiently. The team unleashes their spells, cutting and burning through the trance, and as the battle rages on, Takumi levels up several of his skills. Suddenly, an elder treant appears, significantly stronger than the rest. The girls attack, but their strikes have no lasting effect as the monster regenerates instantly. Seeing this, Sophia tells Takumi they must take it down in a single decisive strike. So she instructs him to coat his blade in fire magic, which he does before rushing the elder treant. Dodging its attacks, he lands a direct strike to its eye, dealing a fatal blow. With that, the creature is finally defeated, and Takumi's skills level up again. Takumi then notices a strange fruit on the ground and is surprised to learn that treants bear fruit. Sophia identifies them as miracle apples, an extremely rare find. So Takumi suggests they take them home, and Maria, excited, announces her plans to bake an apple pie. Later, the group arrives in Juarez and heads straight to the Adventurers Guild. Takumi decides to take a quest to hunt iron moles in order to gain entry to the mine. Soon after, we see the party mining alongside Gambo. Takumi successfully unearths some mithril, and Gambo directs him to a spot containing adamantite ore. Gambo is amazed at Takumi's luck, as it's rare to find such valuable materials on a first mining expedition. Just then, an iron mole suddenly emerges from the ground, and without hesitation, Takumi blinds it using his light magic, allowing Sophia to swiftly finish it off. The others marvel at how effortlessly he took down the creature, and Takumi explains that he figured light magic would work since iron moles thrive in darkness. Sophia is still surprised by how easy it was, while Maria pouts, disappointed that she didn't get to contribute in any shit. With their quest complete, they mine a massive load of ore before returning to Bolton. The next day, Takumi visits Gambo's shop, eager to learn the basics of synthesizing and forging mithril and adamantite alloys. Gambo agrees to teach him and starts by having Takumi forge a mithril knife. Afterward, Takumi upgrades the girls' armor using the high-quality materials he obtained, ensuring they are better prepared for future battles. The scene then shifts to the girls trying on their new armor, utterly speechless at the number of unique skills and enchantments infused within them. Sophia's armor is imbued with wind and water elements, while Maria's carries fire and earth attributes. Takumi explains that to embed their elemental affinities into the armor, he had to saturate magic stones with his mana until they turned blue. Curious, Maria asks Takumi how he enhanced his thunderclap skill, and he proudly reveals that he enchanted it with enhanced agility, making him significantly faster. To demonstrate, he takes off at high speed, but loses control and crashes straight into the wall. The girls, wanting to spare him the embarrassment, pretend not to have seen anything, while Takumi realizes he needs to get used to his newfound speed. Next, he presents Maria with her new spear, Explode, which can fire fireballs, while Sophia receives Tempest, a spear that releases wind energy. She then tells Takumi that if he ever finds himself in danger, she wants to be the one to protect him, even at the cost of her life, so she asks him to craft a shield for her so she can guard him more effectively. Moved by her dedication, Takumi agrees to make a shield for her, but he gently reminds her to value her own life as well. Meanwhile, Lady Nolan observes Takumi from afar, but when she turns her vision toward Akira and Yamato, she sees an ominous scene unfold. The story then jumps 1 year into the future, revealing that in the Holy Empire of Sidonia, the heroes are preparing to march into the kingdom of Samandor. The Emperor entrusts them with the mission, and the heroes swear to do everything in their power for the sake of the world's peace. Back in the present, Takumi finally completes the shield, but the effort has completely drained him. Sophia, watching him from a nearby window, feels guilty for requesting the shield, seeing how exhausted he is. She begins to think that Takumi would have an easier time if he had someone to assist him in his workshop. Meanwhile, in the royal capital of Bacalados in the kingdom of Barcula, the king receives an urgent letter. It reveals that the Holy Empire of Sidonia has learned about the purification magic and is demanding further details. The advisor from earlier speculates that another messenger may arrive within days, but the king grimly notes that despite the polite wording, this is nothing short of a veiled threat. Elsewhere, we see a meeting between a Sidonian envoy and the king of Barcula. The envoy explains that rumors have been circulating about a mystical device being used to purify the sewers. He goes on to say that the Church of Divine Light has formally appealed to Sidonia's Pope, asserting that light magic is a divine gift reserved solely for their church. In essence, they claim that the authority over purification magic rightfully belongs to them. The king pretends to be unaware, asking for clarification on what this really means. The messenger continues, stating that the Pope demands that the purification magic circle along with its patent be turned over to the church. In response, the king argues that if such power is truly bestowed by God, the church should be capable of forging its own magic circle without needing to rely on others. The envoy then adds that the Pope has further ruled that employing sacred purification magic on a magical toilet is absolutely inexcusable, and that whoever is responsible for creating such a contraption must be delivered to the Empire of Sidonia. The king refuses this demand outright, prompting the messenger to warn that the Pope intends to recall all the priests of the Church of Divine Light from their kingdom if the ultimatum is not met. Unfazed, the king coolly replies that they can recall their priests if that is what the church demands. The narrative then cuts to Papik informing Takumi of the unfolding drama. Takumi is astonished that the king would adopt such a severe stance towards Sidonia's emissaries solely for him. Papik reassures him that it isn't a major problem, but Takumi points out that such actions might turn the church against them. Papik then reveals that within this kingdom there exists another religious faction besides the Church of Divine Light, a fact that catches Takumi's attention as he deduces that he must be referring to the Church of Creation. Papik is surprised that Takumi is aware of this alternative faith and goes on to explain that the Church of Creation venerates Lady Nolan. Curious, Takumi asks which deity the Church of Divine Light worships, and Papik responds that they revere a god known as Anat. Shifting the conversation, Papik notes that the kingdom of Barkula prides itself on religious freedom, which has allowed the long-established Church of Creation to amass many followers. Unlike the Church of Divine Light, whose priests demand exorbitant fees for their recovery magic, the clergy of the Church of Creation perform similar feats merely as a gesture of goodwill. Realizing the implications, Takumi concludes that the Church of Divine Light is being bolstered by the Holy Empire of Sidonia, and he wisely decides that it would be best for him to steer clear of getting entangled with them. Papik then informs Takumi that he's actually here today with a special request. He explains that through Marcus Godwin, he had offered the king some samples of his innovative toilets and refrigerators, and in return, the king has requested a meeting with Takumi. Takumi is taken aback by this news, and Papik adds that although the king won't be angry if Takumi declines, his pleading puppy dog eyes tend to sway decisions regardless. Later, Takumi gathers his slaves and announces that he will be heading to the royal capital of Bakalathos, asking if any of them would like to accompany him. Excited at the prospect of visiting the capital for the first time, they all agree, and Takumi informs them that they'll be departing in a week, advising them to prepare in the meantime. Maria wonders aloud how long the journey will take, and Takumi explains that if they ride monster horses, it should take about a week, so Maria immediately points out that such a trip would require plenty of food. Leaving the logistics to Maria, Takumi then mentions that he plans to craft new cloaks for the group while they wait. Curious, the others ask why, and he reveals that Papik has secured some dark elemental magic stones for him. With these stones, he can enchant the cloaks to block perception, a feature that Sophia praises as being especially useful in combat. Takumi also notes that the cloaks will help the girls avoid unwanted attention from unsavory perverted characters in town. The scene then shifts to the two girls out shopping in town. Maria remarks that Takumi isn't valuing himself as highly as he should, and Sophia agrees, even beginning to list all of his admirable qualities. Surprised by how well she seems to know their master, Maria teases Sophia about it. Embarrassed, Sophia quickly changes the subject, making it clear to Maria that she's totally smitten. The scene then shifts to Takumi, kneeling in a quiet church as he prays to Lady Nolan. She greets him, inquiring where his offering is, and he beams at the sight of her once again. Aware that his journey to the capital is imminent, she asks if he has come to seek safe passage, and she requests that he present her offering. Takumi, however, insists on having some questions answered first. He asks her whether Anat exists as a supreme being distinct from her, and with an air of quiet authority, she declares that she is the sole supreme entity, leaving him to wonder who or what Anat might be. Offering only vague reassurances that he will come to understand in time, she leaves him still curious, especially as the Empire of Sidonia appears to be encroaching ever closer. Takumi recalls her earlier words about her blessings being conditional upon his actions and asks if Sidonia's interference is linked to that very clause. She dismisses his query, reminding him that it is precisely Sidonia that brought him here, a matter far beyond the scope of a mere blessing. The young mage then recalls rumors of heroes summoned by Sidonia and presses her for news, noting that he has heard nothing of them since his arrival in this world. Lady Nolan then reveals a startling truth. She has actually sent him back in time by 1 year, meaning the heroes have yet to be summoned. Takumi is puzzled by this intricate twist, and when he persists with his barrage of questions, she curtly tells him that time is up. Before he can continue, Lady Nolan strikes him, and he loses consciousness, awakening later in the real world. He reflects that she must have been evading his inquiries, but he shrugs it off, as he has no real desire to meet these heroes anyway. The narrative then jumps forward 10 months into the future within the Holy Empire of Sidonia. There Akira is shown training diligently with his sword, having honed his skills considerably, while Akane and Yamato watch his progress with admiration. Back to the present, and we see Takumi presenting the new cloaks to the girls. Maple immediately notices that the cloaks perfectly complement his attire, while Sophia initially remarks that the matching ensemble is a bit too bold, so Takumi wonders if perhaps she dislikes the look. However, Sophia quickly assures him that she loves it, much to his relief and delight. Later, we learn that Takumi plans to build his own carriage rather than borrowing one from the guild, aiming for greater comfort. He explains that although he can construct a carriage, they lack a monster horse, so he initially considers borrowing one from the guild. However, Maria steps in and reminds him that this town is known as the City of Adventurers for a reason. She recalls the perils of the Forest of Death and warns him that many dangerous areas with lurking monsters exist. In her view, there are not only monster horses, but also unicorns and drake horses, creatures that are both faster and sturdier. The scene then shifts to the forest surrounding the city, where Takumi ponders whether drake horses are truly swifter than monster horses. Sophia confirms that they are, and even adds that they possess superior stamina. Curious, Takumi asks if this speed is due to their being of a dragon type, to which Maria clarifies that while they aren't actually dragons, they do resemble normal horses, except they sport a horn and are covered in scales reminiscent of a dragon's hide. Realizing this is the origin of their name, Takumi nods in understanding, and Maple becomes excited at the thought of finally having a monster friend. Suddenly, Takumi and the others encounter a bush wolf that dashes right past them. Sophia looks puzzled, and Takumi attributes the wolf's failure to detect them to the effectiveness of their new cloaks. While he praises the cloaks for keeping them hidden, Sophia removes hers, arguing that they need to engage in combat to train and strengthen themselves. The narrative then transitions to a scene of Sophia defeating a boar, prompting Maria to remark that they've now got extra meat. Maple urges them to hurry up, and Takumi soon spots a fallen tree. Recognizing its value, he decides to salvage it for its wood, which he intends to use in building the carriage, especially since he had been considering buying some from Papek. Despite Maple's impatient protests for them to speed things along, Takumi and the others set about chopping up the meat and collecting the wood. Irritated, Maple storms off on her own, dashing through the forest and noting the numerous dead treants scattered about. As she ventures further, she senses something ahead and soon discovers an injured drake horse. The creature throws his magic at her, but she deftly dodges the attack, a move that reminds her of the time when she was injured and Takumi had helped her. In that moment, she tells the drake horse that her master is truly exceptional at healing. But just then, 2 giant ants begin to approach them. Maple notices that the giant ants are the very threat afflicting the drake horse, and she swiftly binds them using her finely spun threads, allowing the drake horse to finish off them. Just as she prepares to leave and summon her master, she suddenly finds herself encircled by a swarm of even larger ants. Desperate, she weaves several layers of her threads into a protective barrier, but the relentless ants begin tearing it apart. Frantically, Maple attempts to reach her master via telepathy, yet no response comes, so she wonders if he's too occupied with chopping wood to notice her distress. And as her concern grows, the drake horse collapses from its injuries. As the ants continue to dismantle her barrier, Maple breaks down in tears, lamenting her master's absence. Just then, the ants finally tear the barrier apart, and Maple instinctively tries to shield the drake horse with her own body. And at that crucial instant, she feels a gentle hand on her head and realizes that her master has arrived. It turns out that the rest of the group has managed to eliminate the invading ants. Maple, still shaken, asks Takumi where he had been, as she had been desperately calling out his name. So he apologizes and explains that her threads had interfered with their telepathic link, but he sensed something was awry when their mana connection dropped, so he followed the trail that she left. He offers a sincere apology for his tardiness, and Maria points out the injured drake horse. Takumi examines the creature and sees that it has lost consciousness from its wounds, so Maple pleads with him to save the horse. Recognizing that Maple had been trying to protect the animal, Takumi attempts to cast a healing spell on the drake horse, only to be repelled by its instinctive wariness of humans even in its unconscious state. Realizing that the drake horse's condition might be fatal if things continue as they are, and with Sophia alerting them to the approach of additional monsters, Takumi has no choice but to retreat both Maple and the horse into his pocket dimension for safety. After he does, Sophia urgently warns him that housing an advanced monster in his pocket dimension without a familiar contract might cause him severe strain. Takumi assures her that he'll be fine, but then when he feels tired, he quickly tries to gulp down a potion to bolster himself. But before he can drink it, he collapses from exhaustion. Later, we see Takumi slumped in his room, fast asleep, with the girls quietly keeping vigil by his side because he's been out for over 12 hours. Sophia remarks to Maria that Takumi won't wake until he's successfully stabilized his pocket dimension, while Maria wonders why Maple hasn't emerged yet. So Sophia speculates that the drake horse remains terrified, and as long as Maple keeps the creature confined in the pocket dimension, it will continue to spook it, causing Takumi to slowly wither away. Convinced that something must be done, Sophia kisses his hand and follows his mana signature, eventually finding Maple. She inquires about the drake horse's condition, and Maple confirms that it's still trembling in fear. Sophia suggests she might be able to coax the drake horse out, but cautions that releasing it into an unfamiliar area could confuse the animal. She points out that unless the creature comes out, it won't receive any healing, and Takumi will remain unconscious. To solve the problem, Sophia proposes that Maple recreate the barrier she had previously woven in the forest. Such a shield would conceal the true location of the drake horse. Maple agrees, then steps into the garden with the drake horse to form a new protective barrier. Meanwhile, Sophia intends to visit Papek's company to acquire some monster medicine, but Maria volunteers to go instead, urging Sophia to stay close to their master. The scene then shifts to Sophia watching over Takumi as he sleeps. In his dreams, Takumi relives moments spent with everyone, until eventually he stirs awake. Opening his eyes, he notices Sophia still sleeping by his bedside, and when she eventually wakes, she beams at the sight of her master and he thanks her warmly for watching over him. He mentions that he needs to check on the drake horse and steps inside Maple's barrier. Noticing that the creature seems to have recovered a bit, Takumi asks if it might become a friend as well, given that it's already grown close to Maple. He uses his magic to gently tame the drake horse and succeeds. Following this, Takumi casts a powerful healing spell to restore the creature's health, and Maple dispels the barrier around it. Takumi announces that they have gained a new companion, prompting Maple to ask what name they should give her. Inspired, Takumi decides to name the drake horse Camellia, after a leaf-bearing tree that retains its foliage year-round and blossoms with red and white flowers. The girls all agree that it's a lovely name, and Maria suggests they all sit down to eat, announcing that she has just finished preparing dinner. Meanwhile, at the bustling Palon Trading Company in Barcula's capital, the owner frantically tried to sell a beastman slave gifted with magical prowess, yet the potential buyer remained utterly indifferent. Though he conceded that a beastman with such rare abilities was a unique find, he insisted on a live demonstration of her magic. The slave earnestly declared that she planned to study hard and eventually prove her worth. However, her promises didn't satisfy his immediate demands, and the buyer ultimately walked away empty-handed. Disheartened but not defeated, Reva was gently consoled by the owner, who reassured her that one day a discerning and kind master would recognize her true potential. Later on, we find Reva alone in her modest room, lost in thought. She recalls the days when she still lived with her family, days marred by financial hardship that forced her to leave for the city to save some money, and with a promise to send money back to her brother. Yet despite all her efforts, she hasn't managed to fulfill that promise. The narrative then transitions to Takumi's mansion, where Maria casually inquires whether he plans to visit Gambo's workshop once more. Takumi confirms that he does, explaining that his carriage urgently requires some expert blacksmith work. Sophia, ever the worrier, points out that he recently took on an extra order for potions and refrigerators and hasn't had a moment's rest in days. Maria urges him to take care of himself, but he insists he's fine as he sets out. Not long after, at the Adventurers Guild, Takumi overhears a heated discussion about a mysterious, unsettling creature reportedly seen on the city's outskirts. Curious, he approaches the receptionist, who explains that recent reports have described a bizarre creature roaming near the city's edge. He even shows him a crude sketch, noting how strange it is that no significant damage has yet been recorded. Then, when asked about his own presence, Takumi reveals that he's here to register a new pet. The receptionist's eyes light up with excitement. He remarks that it takes something truly extraordinary to surprise him these days. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Takumi unveils his pet camellia. Almost immediately, the guild members notice that camellia bears an uncanny resemblance to the creature in the sketch. Alarmed by this startling coincidence, the guild master swiftly summons Takumi for a private discussion. Meanwhile, as the town bustles around, Sophia strolls through the streets, her thoughts still lingering on her recent trip to Mulan Trading Company. She remembers how she'd been on the hunt for a beast-man slave with magical abilities to assist Takumi with his production, but no candidate proved suitable. Still, Mulan had promised to spread the word among other traders, and Sophia had thanked her warmly. But before she left, Mulan even remarked that Sophia had changed ever since sealing her contract with Takumi. In the present, Maria bumps into Sophia on the street. Sophia casually asks if Maria's done shopping yet, to which Maria replies that she still needs to visit the butcher. Sophia then confides that Takumi seems constantly worn out these days, and she wishes she could ease his burden by ensuring he gets plenty of nutrition. Though she longs to help, she admits she isn't skilled enough in alchemy, and Maria assures her she'll do her best through cooking. When Sophia offers to lend a hand, Maria insists that it's best if she sticks to her own duties. Sophia takes the gentle rebuff in stride, and Maria notes that Sophia appears noticeably different, her expression softer, more at ease. Surprised to hear the observation a second time, Sophia blushes and quickly changes the subject, suggesting that they go pick up Takumi. They soon arrive at Diambo's workshop, only to find Takumi fast asleep at his station. Diambo explains that Takumi was utterly exhausted and dozed off mid-work, warning that if he continues at this pace, he'll collapse. Not long after, Takumi proudly unveils his newly finished carriage and invites Camellia to pull it. But before taking it out for a test drive, the girls examine it closely and are astonished to discover that it's not just a carriage, it's essentially a moving house, complete with individual rooms and bathrooms. They embark on a ride, and despite the vehicle shaking on the outside, the interior remains remarkably smooth and comfortable. Curious, Takumi asks Maria for her thoughts. While she expresses her approval, she suggests adding some decorative blades along the sides. When he inquires about the idea, Maria grins and says it would look incredibly cool. After a few days, they let Camilla run around town with the carriage, and her stats quickly level up in the process. Then comes the day to set off for the capital, and Takumi notices that the Lion Fang will be joining them as an escort. Riel inquires about the creature pulling his carriage, and Heath clarifies that it's a drake horse. Just then, Godwin and Papek arrive as well. Papek is visibly excited to see the carriage and asks Takumi if he can take a peek inside. Takumi agrees, and upon inspection, Papek is astonished that Takumi built the carriage himself. Takumi confirms he did, prompting Papek to ask for all the details of how he managed such a feat. Overenthused, Papek exclaims that he'll pay handsomely for this work, but Godwin quickly intervenes to temper his enthusiasm. Papek apologizes, and Godwin remarks that the carriage is truly impressive. He states that he would be fortunate to own a carriage like this, and Takumi realizes that Godwin wants one made for him. Godwin boasts that he's willing to pay up to 100 platinum coins for it, and Takumi muses that such a price would be equivalent to 1 billion yen, surprised at the astronomical sum. They then begin their journey to the capital, and along the way, Godwin praises Takumi for his significant contributions to his domain. He proclaims that Takumi is set to play an even larger role and become renowned far and wide. His butler concurs, and Godwin adds that Takumi's exceptional talent attracts all sorts of attention, so he'll need protection from unscrupulous riffraff. However, Godwin admits he can only manage threats within the kingdom. When it comes to Sidonia or other nations, he has no idea what schemes they might be plotting, so vigilance is key. The scene then shifts to Sidonia, several months in the future, where we see Ekini reading that the goddess Anak created mankind in her own image, and then fashioned the beast men from wild creatures to serve humanity. Then she created the elves and dwarves, placing them beneath mankind in hierarchy. Ekini then glances at a slate collar from the beast men displayed in her room and feels a deep sense of disgust. Meanwhile, Takumi and his entourage arrive at the capital of Bakalatos, and Takumi is relieved that they didn't encounter any monster trouble along the way. Riel mentions that they did, but thanks to Takumi's loyal slaves and pets, the creatures were wiped out in an instant, leaving them with little extra work. Papek then informs Takumi that he'd like to discuss something with him once they reach the inn. At the inn, Papik reveals to Takumi that he intends to gift the king a carriage similar to Takumi's own masterpiece. He explains that he has already spoken with Godwin about it, and they both agree that presenting such a carriage is the best way to demonstrate Takumi's exceptional talent to the king. With an audience scheduled with the monarch in 5 days, Papik expresses concern that building a carriage in such a short time would be challenging if done in Bolton. He asks Takumi to begin work as soon as they return there. However, Takumi insists that he can construct it here, noting that hauling a carriage back from Bolton would be too much effort. He adds that he can manage with the materials he currently has, but he will need adequate workspace, and Papik promises to take care of that. Later, Takumi is seen discussing the new project with his slaves. He explains that Papik has arranged for him to operate out of the garden of the Palm Company. Sophia chimes in, mentioning that she's heard of this company, a reputable slave trading enterprise run by a man named Burton, and advises that Takumi should secure an assistant to help with the work. Maria then points out that he barely rested before this trip, and now he's diving back into production without a break. She cautions that this is reckless even for him, but Takumi assures them that he isn't truly tired. Sophia, still upbeat about the prospect of working with the Palm Company, suggests that Takumi should purchase another slave. Takumi initially declines, insisting that having just the 2 he already works with is sufficient. However, Sophia presses on, arguing that since neither of them can assist him with alchemy, an extra hand would be invaluable. In the end, Takumi relents and agrees to buy another slave, and they ask that the new recruit must be a woman, and he accepts this without further protest. The next day, Takumi arrives at the company and asks Burton for a slave who can assist him with his alchemy work. Burton remarks that he's heard Takumi is using alchemy to construct a carriage forged from mithril and adamantite, and he believes such a project requires someone with considerable magical aptitude. Meanwhile, in the company's garden, Maria and Sophia discover that they've lost sight of Maple. Maria, deeply worried because Maple had mentioned she wanted to explore the company's various buildings, urges Sophia to search for her. Sophia scours one of the buildings but finds no trace of Maple, until she suddenly hears a scream. Rushing toward the sound, she finds Maple there with Reva trembling nearby. Although Maple tries to calm Reva, her efforts are insufficient, so Sophia steps in to help her up and gently soothe her. While assisting, Sophia notices an old book scattered on the floor. Reva explains that it's an encyclopedia on Arnold-style alchemy, a renowned primer for grasping the fundamentals of alchemy. Later, as Sophia returns to the garden, she runs into Takumi, who invites her to join him as he meets a prospective slave candidate. To their surprise, the candidate turns out to be none other than Reva. Burton formally introduces them, and Takumi explains the nature of his work. Eager to prove herself this time, Reva admits she's interested in alchemy, though she hesitates as she recalls the harsh words of her previous buyer, revealing that she still feels unsure about her abilities. Sophia then tells Takumi that Reva has been self-studying magic on her own here. She even saw Reva earlier, poring over an alchemy book. Sophia tries to recall the title of the book, and in unison both Reva and Takumi manage to say its name, their shared excitement unmistakable. Burton and Sophia exchange knowing glances, remarking that these two are clearly kindred spirits. Takumi then draws an alchemic circle on a sheet of paper and asks Reva what its purpose is. She manages to identify it as a circle for spinning sweets, though it's slightly different from the one she's used to, leaving her uncertain. Overcome with doubt, she begins to cry, wondering what the hell her next step should be, and confesses that this isn't the sweet spinning circle familiar in her hometown, fearing she might be rejected again. In that moment, Takumi extends his hand to her, warmly welcoming her into his party. Reva is taken aback, as she initially couldn't decipher the alchemic circle that Takumi had shown her. However, Takumi reassures her by pointing out that she did correctly recognize it as the alchemic circle used for spinning sweets, so it's all right. He adds that it doesn't matter if the materials are different, and he praises her for grasping the concept at a glance. Curious, she asks if he truly intends to accept her as his apprentice, and when he confirms, she is overjoyed to finally have a master. They then formalize their contract, with Takumi promising to pay her daily wages from that point on. Reva requests that all her wages be sent directly to her family back home. Surprised, Takumi asks if she means every single coin, and she nods, explaining that her family is very poor. She recalls that she once managed to send them a little money by selling herself into slavery, but she's convinced those funds will soon run dry. She confides that she doesn't want her brother to continue living in poverty and wishes to ease her mother's burdens. Takumi warns her that if she sends all her wages home, she might remain a slave forever, yet Sophia interjects that he should honor her request. She assures him that by working for him, Reva will eventually develop enough skill to earn a living on her own, and that serving a kind master indefinitely isn't such a terrible fate. Takumi accepts this reasoning and later introduces Reva to the rest of the team, much to her delight. The scene then shifts to the present in the Holy Empire of Sidonia, where the Emperor learns that the Kingdom of Barcula still refuses to relinquish Takumi, despite having sent 3 missives by now. The Emperor considers that they must be taught a lesson, but Elizabeth intervenes, urging him to hold off on any rash actions until the heroes are summoned in a few months. Still reluctant to let the matter rest, the Emperor presses on, but Elizabeth advises him to harness the power of faith. She explains that they will spread word that someone is disrespecting the Church of Divine Light, a move sure to incite the anger of its faithful. Moreover, she warns that the Church of Divine Light Squadron will not stand idly by when such sacrilege occurs. The scene transitions to Takumi skillfully assembling the frame of his new carriage. Reva observes in astonishment, marveling at his ability to utilize such an intricate alchemy circle to synthesize adamantite. With a lighthearted chuckle, Takumi downplays the complexity, assuring her that while it may seem advanced, she will soon be capable of creating similar formations herself. Though hesitant, daunted by the sophistication of the technique, Reva listens as Takumi shares a crucial insight. True mastery in alchemy comes not just from knowledge, but from passion. Encouragingly, he reminds her that she already possesses the most vital quality, an innate excitement for the craft. Later, we see that the day has come for Takumi to meet the king, and his carriage is finally complete. Then an elderly man approaches to inspect it, asking if it truly belongs to him. Takumi replies that he built it for the king, and the old man is even more impressed than he had heard. Takumi is taken aback when he wonders how the man knows his name, and then Papik and Godwin rush over, referring to the elderly visitor simply as the king. Takumi is shocked to discover that he is indeed in the presence of the king, who bows down to him, and Godwin and Papik follow suit. Godwin comments that he had expected their audience to be held in the grand chamber, while the king explains that he just wanted to thank Takumi without any of the usual formalities, leading Takumi to wonder what exactly that meant. The king goes on to say that thanks to Takumi's ingenious solution, they now have a fix for the sewage problem that had long plagued the kingdom. Takumi, bowing his head in gratitude, pleads with the king not to overdo the praises. The king then apologizes, explaining that under normal circumstances he would hold a lavish banquet in Takumi's honor, bestowing grand rewards and even a peerage, but that such ostentatious gestures would only attract unwanted attention in Takumi's particular case. Unconcerned with titles or riches, Takumi thanks the king for protecting him from Sidonia, to which the king modestly replies that it was simply his duty. Takumi is moved to see that the king truly values his people above all else, and after receiving a modest reward for solving the sewage crisis, he departs. As they leave, the king instructs his trusted ministers to keep the details of their meeting strictly under wraps, so they issue an immediate gag order. Still, they all agree that Takumi's influence is bound to grow, and that his identity might soon become public once the magical devices are exported to other nations. The king admits that this possibility worries him, and he is convinced that the Church of Divine Light will retaliate if the secret ever gets out. Several days later, Takumi and his crew are back in their mansion, which he ended up purchasing from Papik. Later, we catch him in a heated discussion with one of his slaves. He's pissed off that they keep forgoing their wages. Maria tries to calm him down, saying it's fine since he already provides food and other necessities, and she's content with the regular allowance. Sophia echoes her sentiment, but Takumi insists that they should actually take their wages, even if they don't need them, because having some savings is important, especially since their contracts with him will eventually end. Sophia then declared with heartfelt conviction that she plans to serve him forever, convinced he'll kick the bucket before she does, and then she'll guard his grave for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, Maria quips that she just wants to die a day after her master and be buried right next to him, though Takumi can't quite wrap his head around their odd affections. The scene then shifts to Sidonia and the present, where someone shows Elizabeth a contraption they're using to purify toilets in Bolton. The messenger explains they snagged one of these devices during an infiltration of Bacalatos, and Elizabeth immediately deems it a heretical piece of junk. She wonders if they don't give a damn about the wrath of the goddess, and the messenger informs her that most believers in the Church of Divine Light are itching to decisively crush the source of this evil. Elizabeth agrees, ordering the messenger to dispose of this cursed contraption before it spreads any further. Shortly after, we learn that Reva wants to register with the guild. She tells Takumi she'd like to join him as an adventurer, convinced that the experience will help her sharpen her alchemy skills and become a better craftsman. Takumi finds her reasoning sound. After all, adventuring can boost one's mana, and he promptly registers her at the guild. Reva was overjoyed to be accepted and gratefully thanked Hans for his help in sending her reward money back home at an exceptionally low cost, a service that Hans explained was common among adventurers. Hans then asks Takumi if he has come up with a party name yet, but Takumi hasn't managed to decide on one. So Hans says that Takumi's party is one of the top class groups in their guild and that they really should pick a name soon. Takumi, however, isn't convinced they need one. After all, he isn't planning on becoming a professional adventurer. He grumbles that they aren't exactly like the Lion's Fong, with clear role divisions. Instead, they're just a ragtag bunch of misfits. He even laments that things would be different if he could fight on the front lines. Overhearing this, Barak steps in, declaring he's going to help him out. Takumi again insists that he's not aiming to be a full-time adventurer, but Barak is having none of it because he already vows to train him, and soon enough we see Barak tossing Takumi around like a ragdoll. While pounding on him, Barak demands that Takumi come up with a name for their party. Every suggestion Takumi offers is so ridiculously bad that it makes Barak furious, and he continues to hurl him about. He keeps roaring to him that he just needs to think of a name that actually reflects who are they. And by watching this chaotic scene, Reva wonders if being an alchemist is really supposed to be this damn hard. Later on, as Maria tends to Takumi's bruises, he asks his servants if they have any suggestions for a party name. He complains that every time he rejects a name, Barak throws him around like he's worthless. The servants offer a few suggestions, but none fare any better than his own feeble attempts. Sophia remains silent through it all, and it soon becomes clear she's absolutely pissed at the guild master for beating Takumi up so horribly. She declares that she's going to make him pay and starts heading to the guild, but Takumi stops her, insisting that the guild master was just training him. In fact, he reveals that thanks to the beating he took today, he actually managed to level up some of his skills. Sophia decides to stand down for now, and Takumi resigns himself to the fact that his suffering will likely continue until he finally picks a decent party name. The scene then shifts to the Empire of Sidonia, 10 months into the future. There we see Yamato locked in combat with the captain of the guards, overpowering him with sheer brute strength. Akira, watching from a distance, scoffs and calls Yamato nothing more than a brute who relies solely on muscle. Akane chimes in and asks if he thinks he's better than him, to which Akira boasts that he is. After all, he's a hero. She reminds him that all three of them are heroes, and when he tries to ask her out to hang out, she storms off, having no intention of wasting her time with a cocky jerk. Later, we see Akane curled up in her room with a book, pondering how the Church of Divine Light preaches human supremacy. Yet, based on what she's heard around town, there's another religion, and it's the Church of Creation, which teaches that all races are children of Nolan. She suspects that this nation is dominated by the Church of Divine Light that summoned them, and she's convinced there's a hidden agenda behind their summoning. Although they claim it's all for world peace, she can't help but wonder what they really want from them. The scene then shifts to Takumi, who is handing a ring and a staff over to Reva, explaining that these items will help her activate spells. Reva remarks that they'll come in handy on their next adventure, while Maple can't help but feel jealous that only Reva is receiving new weapons. Not to be outdone, Takumi reveals that he's crafted Wolverine claws specifically for Maple, assuring her that they won't interfere with her thread manipulation, and he even mentions that Reva helped her make them. This gesture makes Maple smile broadly as she thanks them both. Later on, we see Takumi once again getting pummeled by Barak, while he desperately rants out a series of new party name suggestions. Every idea is worse than the last, and with each failed attempt, Barak isn't shy about letting him have it. Takumi worries that if this goes on, Sophia might finally snap on Barak. However, instead of losing her cool, Sophia starts instructing him on what he's doing wrong and how he can improve, almost like a freaking strict tutor. After training for the day, Hans approaches Takumi with an escort mission offer. He explains that this job will help build their rank, and when Takumi asks how many days it will take, Barak estimates about 4 days with his super carriage. Hans then reveals that the request is actually from Paypek Trading Company. Takumi wonders if the Lion's Fong aren't handling this quest, as they usually do escort missions for Paypek, but Hans informs him that they're currently on another mission. Realizing that they're acting as backup, Takumi hesitates over accepting the quest, but his slaves insist, so he eventually agrees. They set off, and Hans hopes that by the time they return, they'll have finally settled on a proper party name. Later, we see Takumi and his group escorting Thomas along with several of Paypek's shipments. Thomas expresses his relief at having such capable guardians by his side, and Takumi, ever vigilant, hopes that no monster attacks will occur along the way. Thomas adds that, in addition to the toilet, he's delivering a variety of devices this time, and the company president has even instructed them to secure some milk. Takumi is taken aback to learn that milk even exists in this world. Thomas goes on to explain that the town of Kilbis is also famed for another everyday product, which they call cheese. Takumi is surprised once more, and after traveling a bit further, they encounter two rival groups of monsters on the verge of clashing over territory. In a dazzling display of power, Camellia obliterates them all in one swift attack, leading Thomas to remark that such a show would surely keep any further monster trouble at bay. Soon after, they arrive at Kilbis, where Takumi and his team sit down to enjoy a hearty cream stew. As they savor the dish, Takumi muses that while the stew has room for improvement, its nostalgic flavor is undeniable. He reminds everyone that they must purchase both cheese and milk before departing, prompting Sophia to decide to head to the market later that evening. That night, the group gathers to savor cheese with bread, a combination so delicious that Riva insists on sharing it with her mother and little brother. Takumi reflects on how it feels like only a few months have passed since he arrived in this world, yet those months have stretched into years in his heart. He admits that he'll never be able to return to his old life, and he finds himself strangely nostalgic. Perhaps it's the milk and cheese that stir these memories. Curiously, he asks Sophia if they have rice in this world, and she replies that while grain is available in the kingdom of Samander, rice is not found in Bolton. Maria then says that they were selling some rice in the capital, and Takumi is disappointed that he didn't manage to grab any while he was there. He then asks Sophia if she ever misses her homeland and its food, to which Sophia replies that she prefers the present to dwell on memories of her hometown. She explains that she endured a curse for over 50 years, but forming a contract with him has given her a whole new lease on life, as if he finally given wings to a caged bird. She says she only looks forward to the future, not back at the past, and the others nod in agreement. This gives Takumi an idea for their party name, and he declares that their group will be called Wings of Nolan. He explains that by giving each other wings, they can move forward together, so the name suits them perfectly. Everyone likes the name, and 2 nights later, they return to Bolton. As they enter their mansion, Takumi immediately notices a paralyzing poison lingering in the air, and some strange-looking men seize his friends. One of them approaches him with a knife, intent on killing him, but Maple swiftly disarms the assailant, and Takumi follows up with a powerful hit to his stomach. The other attacker then lunges at Takumi, but he counters with some new wrestling moves, taking him down quickly before finishing him off with a punch to the guts. Afterward, he heals his friends, and Sophia apologizes for failing to protect him. Takumi shrugs it off, and Maria inquires how he managed to avoid paralysis. He explains that both he and Maple have developed poison and paralysis resistance, though he admits he still feels a bit numb. Maple then asks what they should do with the intruders outside, revealing that she has captured several assailants while leading Camilla to her stable. She had sensed that there might be more inside the house as well, which is why she hid herself in the pocket dimension. Sophia speculates that this attack was premeditated and suggests that they seek help from the guild. Takumi then instructs her to bring Barak from the guild. Soon after, we see a carriage transporting the captured assailants away, and Barak advises Takumi to report the incident to the Lord, noting that it's a serious matter. Early the next morning, Takumi meets with Godwin, who discloses that the attackers from last night were members of the Divine Light Squadron, a faction of zealots whose fanaticism exceeds even the extreme standards set by the Holy Sidonia Empire. These extremists, driven by their unwavering belief in the Church of Divine Light's doctrines, independently target and eliminate anyone they suspect of straying from the Church of Divine Light's teachings. Takumi is shocked and frightened to learn that these attackers were indeed trained assassins and not merely common thieves as he had hoped. Godwin is convinced that the root of the problem lies in the magic toilets Takumi created. In the past, priests had to periodically purify the toilets using holy magic, a task that brought in enormous income for Sidonia's clergy. Now that Takumi has eliminated their main source of revenue, the priests are determined to take revenge. Takumi briefly considers going off the grid, but Godwin and his subordinates assure him that he'd be safer if he remains in their sight. After all, they can actively support him. The guildmaster insists they need to improve Takumi's security during adventuring. Takumi nervously protests that he'd rather take a break, but the guildmaster refuses to let his party, one of the top 5 in their city, halt their work. With Sophia promising to keep him safe at all costs, the guildmaster finally convinces him to continue his adventuring duties. Later, Takumi heads to the Adventurers Guild to officially register his party under the name Wings of Nolan. The receptionist compliments the flashy name but warns him to be cautious, noting that rumors are already circulating about someone sending assassins after him, and that many now believe he has a high bounty on his head. That night, Takumi gathers his girls and shares the receptionist's warning. Although he feels guilty about putting them in danger, they confidently assure him that they will protect him with everything they've got. Takumi feels relieved after hearing the reassuring words, but he's determined not to have the girls and the knights devote all their time to guarding him. To solve that problem, he devises an idea: to cast a magic barrier around his house that repels anyone not registered with it. He plans to create a magic device to project the barrier and asks Riva to help him. Thinking ahead to their upcoming adventures, Sophia suggests that they add a tank to their party. All the girls chime in, jokingly insisting that they wouldn't let any guy join. After all, the bigger his harem, the prouder they are. Takumi agrees with their suggestions, but he has no clue where to find a female tank or attacker to join their ranks. Sophia then suggests contacting the Mulan slave trading company, as it might be a good starting point. With that settled, the girls retire for the night while Takumi begins crafting the magic circles for his safety device. The next morning, as Takumi is about to start working on the device with Riva's help, Sophia approaches him, eager to contribute as well. Takumi assigns both her and Riva the task of engraving the alchemy circle onto metal plates. Later, he sprinkles pixie dust over the plates to imbue them with magical energy. At that moment, they catch sight of Maple riding Camellia and charging at enormous silk dolls, playfully pretending they are enemy golems. Riva remarks that golems too are a product of alchemy, and Takumi nods, admitting he's aware of them, but that their complex core has kept him from attempting to make one himself. Riva muses that a golem could be the perfect tank for their party. While Takumi agrees in principle, he accepts that his current skills won't allow him to create one yet. He then resumes work on the barrier device. As he links the magical circles, his mana manipulation skill maxes out and unexpectedly evolves into a more refined spell control skill. Takumi realizes that leveling up his spell control might one day enable him to construct golems. Meanwhile, in the distant empire of Sidonia, the Emperor learns that the Divine Light Squadron has been captured, and apparently they couldn't even take their own lives before being caught. Realizing that matters have grown even more complicated, his daughter Elizabeth chimes in, insisting that they stop fixating on one man when larger plans are at stake. The court mage explains that they've assembled an ancient magic circle to summon heroes, but they need at least a couple of months to amass the required magic power. At the same time, Takumi attempts to synthesize a golem's core through alchemy, but his skills fall short of the mark. Observing his struggles, Maple suggests that instead of creating one from scratch, he might simply tame an existing golem. Intrigued by her idea, he immediately consults Sophia about where such golems might be found. Sophia informs him that stray stone golems can be found among ancient ruins, while iron golems typically reside within dungeons. Takumi is taken aback to learn that dungeons exist in this realm, and he quickly decides that acquiring an iron golem would be ideal. Despite Sophia's warnings that charging into a dungeon without a proper tank or frontline attacker would be reckless, Takumi is determined and leads his party toward the dungeon. Before they even reach the dungeon's entrance, they encounter a massive stray stone golem. Sophia advises that its control core must be destroyed if they hope to defeat it. However, Takumi is reluctant to destroy the core, as it is the very component he desires. Suddenly, the golem becomes alert, its eyes beginning to glow, and it pivots toward them. Both Takumi and Sophia instinctively duck. While Sophia urges caution, insisting that fighting the golem would be too risky, Takumi counters that if they can tame it, the golem would serve as a formidable tank for their party. Without hesitation, he leaps down to confront the golem, and the girls have no choice but to follow his lead. As the golem advances, surrounded by his party, Takumi unexpectedly senses a connection with the creature. He orders his companions to hold their fire, approaching the golem slowly and studying it intently. In that moment, he realizes that the golem was originally programmed to guard ruins dedicated to the goddess Nolan, and it now seems to be reacting to her blessings on him. Relying on his taming abilities, Takumi manages to subdue the golem with ease, much to everyone's astonishment. Maple, excited by the prospect of gaining a new junior, prompts him to name the creature. After a brief moment of thought, he christens the old golem Titan. The newly tamed Titan attempts to communicate, but its language remains a mystery. Takumi considers fitting it with a voice box, yet he quickly realizes that parading such a colossal being into the city would undoubtedly incite panic. He even contemplates transporting the golem via his pocket dimension. However, before he can decide, Titan unexpectedly sheds all its mass and shrinks down into a miniature version of itself. Upon returning home, Takumi immediately sets his mind on designing a new body for Titan. But before he even begins manufacturing, he calls a critical meeting with his slaves. He explains that there are enemies after him and that he doesn't want them to be caught in the crossfire. For this reason, he proposes dissolving their contracts so they can safely return to their own lives. The girls are horrified at the suggestion, insisting they will not abandon him even in the face of danger. In response, Takumi reminds them that he still has Titan and his 2 pets to protect him, and he promises to pay them handsomely so that once his contracts end, they won't be forced to be a slave to someone else. But despite his assurances, the girls are reluctant to accept the idea. Suddenly, Maria slams her spear toward him, declaring that if he really intends to release them, he'll have to answer to her first. She launches into a passionate tirade, condemning him for even considering leaving them behind during such perilous times. Overcome by emotion, both Maria and Takumi break down. Sophia then steps in to comfort a tearful Maria, explaining that while she understands Takumi's concern for their safety, his suggestion to send them away during his worst moments hurt them deeply. Reflecting on the unwavering loyalty they have always shown, Takumi apologizes sincerely for imposing his burdens on them and disregarding their feelings. He pleads with them to stand by his side and help fight his enemies, and the girls wholeheartedly agree. A few days later, Takumi completes the new body for Titan, crafted from a blend of adamantite and mithril, outfitted with advanced weapons and defensive features, and even capable of speech. In a nod to his childhood dream of becoming a Power Ranger, he creates a colossal version of Titan that he can literally enter and control as if it were an extension of his own body. As he weeps with joy over his achievement, Nolan, who has been watching his progress as if she were a fan of his YouTube channel, muses that he might have gone a bit too far with that golem. Just then, her assistant bursts in with shocking news about the so-called goddess Anat, whom the Sidonia Empire worships. Apparently, there was never a true goddess named Anat. Instead, due to the fervent devotion of the Church of Divine Light, a being by that name is slowly coming into being, and it's turning into an evil spirit. Nolan had long suspected that such a phenomenon might occur, and she now realizes that it could spark a catastrophic war on Earth, one that Sidonia and its heroes might unwittingly ignite. Unable to intervene directly in the mortal realm, she had endowed Takumi with his new body and powerful blessings so that he could rise to the occasion and save the entire realm. A year earlier, in a quiet settlement near Bolton, a beast woman named Mani stood before a grave, lost in mourning. Her sorrow was interrupted when an acquaintance called her away, and she reluctantly departed. Later, as she sat inside a train carriage, hushed voices filled the space around her. Passengers spoke in somber tones, lamenting their fate, trapped with nowhere to go but this struggling village. They recounted how the nobles, indulging in their own desires, had driven the economy to ruin, then abandoned the land when it could no longer sustain them, seeking refuge in neighboring territories. Among them, a woman bitterly recalled Mani's husband, a man who had worked himself to the brink of death, only to be left without proper medical care, a cruel consequence of the nobles' neglect. A year after the village was abandoned, Godwin learns that the refugees were kindly taken in by Count Rockford at that time. His 2 subordinates are incensed by the nobles' pettiness over the matter, but Godwin stresses that they cannot forsake those who have lost their homes. In fact, Rockford has sent a letter requesting that the 1,000 refugees be granted a new home, so it was clear that a vast expanse of land was needed. But the only available territory was notorious for its roaming monsters, a formidable obstacle that could only be overcome by summoning the one person uniquely capable of handling such threats. Shifting our focus, we move on to Takumi, who believes it's a brilliant plan for the Wings of Nolan to tackle a dungeon challenge. Upon arriving at the labyrinth's entrance, Takumi reflects that it is the first time he has to explore such a mysterious place. And out of the many available dungeons, they chose one rated as the second most difficult, the Beast King Forest, which although located underground, boasts expansive skies and lush woods. Inside the dungeon, even though the monsters are far more powerful than those encountered outside, the party's rigorous training gives them an advantage. Thanks to Maple's sharp senses, they detect enemy movements early, allowing them to launch surprise attacks and set up effective defenses. Moreover, with Titan taking the brunt of the monster's assaults as their tank, the Wings of Nolan systematically defeat the bosses on each floor and collect the treasures that drop in the wake of their victories. After an entire day of exploration, the team finally reaches the labyrinth's final floor. Spirits are high as they marvel at having come so far with hardly a scratch on them, and Takumi attributes their success to their careful avoidance of traps. But no sooner does he finish his remark than he inadvertently steps on a concealed false floor, triggering a massive iron ball that begins to roll ominously behind them. Fortunately, they manage to sprint away just in time to evade its crushing impact. Once they regroup in safety, Maple quips whether Titan could have simply destroyed the iron ball. Takumi explains that while Titan certainly had the power to do so, he had commanded an orderly retreat instead, and Titan had obeyed perfectly. In the midst of their conversation, one of the passageways mysteriously seals shut, leaving them no choice but to follow the sole remaining route. Takumi senses that this new path leads to an uninviting locale, and as if on cue, an S-rank Earth dragon suddenly emerges from the shadows. The sight makes Takumi long for the might of the great Titan, wishing he had been with him to confront this formidable beast. The ensuing battle clearly favors the dragon, whose relentless assault forces the Wings of Nolan to remain perpetually on the defensive. Seizing a brief opportunity, Takumi orders Titan and Maple to secure the dragon's tail, effectively preventing the creature from using it to its advantage. Titan promptly clamps onto the tail, while Maple casts a web to further immobilize the beast. Capitalizing on the moment, Sophia thrusts her spear into one of the dragon's limbs, followed in quick succession by Takumi's precise wind cut, Riva's explosive fire barrage, and Maria's scorching fire lance. At the same time, Titan is instructed to summon the Light of Judgment. Although this combined assault convinces Riva that the dragon has been vanquished, Takumi remains skeptical, knowing that the foe is far from defeated. In a sudden twist, the winged dragon rises from the smoldering ashes and unleashes a torrent of fire at Titan, inflicting devastating damage. Amid the chaos, Sophia discerns that the dragon's flank is its weak point. Seizing the moment, Takumi summons Camellia, commanding her to charge and deliver a powerful headbutt to that vulnerable side. Not long after, Takumi himself advances, imbuing his sword with electrical magic before hurling it at the dragon. The enchanted blade strikes true, and the dragon disintegrates into nothingness, signaling the triumph of the Wings of Nolan and securing both the final treasure and the entire dungeon for them. To everyone's astonishment, Camellia begins to grow in size as she evolves. Scooping up a fragment of the dragon's remains from the ground, Takumi envisions the possibility of crafting fascinating new items from this rare, powerful material. After emerging from the dungeon, Takumi is promptly summoned by Godwin. In a private meeting, Godwin explains that in the southern reaches of his domain lie vast untapped lands, and it's a wild frontier abandoned by settlement because monsters roam freely and render the area perilous. He recounts that in the past, the kingdom of Triaria once invaded this region. Not only did they suffer crushing defeat, but the resulting fallout also plunged their own kingdom into decline. Takumi interjects, mentioning that he's heard the region is rich in unexplored adamantite and mithril. Sensing an opportunity, Godwin suggests that Takumi spearhead the establishment of a new development settlement on this land. He cites the success of Board Village, where Takumi had quickly erected a resilient wall around the territory, as evidence that he is more than capable of replicating such a feat. Godwin's assistant then provides more details, revealing that there is a river and a spring approximately 105 miles south of Bolton. This location, with its dependable water source and relative distance from dangerous monsters, would be an ideal starting point for a new settlement. Meanwhile, Sophia, still deeply concerned about her master's safety due to his ongoing pursuit by the fanatical Divine Light Squadron, expresses her worries. Godwin, aware of the precarious timing, laments that he must press this development project despite the delicate circumstances. However, he explains that there is an urgent humanitarian need. A settlement had been abandoned a year ago when the nobles' corruption brought development to a halt, leaving its residents homeless and forcing them into refugee status in Bolton and Rockford. The plan now is to rebuild quickly and provide new homes for those displaced. Moved by his own past hardship of homelessness, Takumi accepts the mission without hesitation, knowing he cannot leave these people destitute. The people of Board Village, who had once welcomed him with open arms, serve as a reminder of the importance of community. Later on his mission, Takumi opts out of a nightly escort, so Nolan's wings end up journeying alone to the development site, a region blessed with abundant water and a favorable climate. There his team uses earth magic to raise sturdy walls and dig deep moats around a budding fortress. They also construct internal roads, build aqueducts, cultivate timber groves, and systematically eliminate nearby monsters. After working for a while, Takumi tells Sophia to return to Bolton and summon the new residents for this promising new settlement. When Sophia arrives and relays the news, Godwin is utterly astonished that the settlement has been completed and is ready to welcome refugees after only 10 days of construction. Consequently, a convoy carrying the displaced people is dispatched. Along the journey, the refugees murmur among themselves that they're being sent to the southern border, an undeveloped, monster-infested wasteland where they fear they're destined to perish, merely to rid the nobles of their burdens. From their overheard conversations, it appears that the entire operation was entrusted to a man sent from Bolton, a rich, callous individual who treats the poor as nothing more than disposable pawns. At the journey's end, the warriors tasked with escorting the convoy are left speechless by the sheer size of the wall encircling the new settlement. Their amazement deepens when they notice not only perfectly constructed houses, but also a castle standing proudly in the center of the area. When the escort officer meets Takumi, he explains that he was busy preparing the soil for agriculture and assures the officer that the wall is robust enough to repel any invaders, unless of course they're dragons. The officer presses for details about the castle, and Takumi explains that it's intended as a residence for the settlement's governors, given that there are already plenty of houses for the residents. He adds that the settlement includes a barracks for the knights and even a sophisticated sewage system that employs septic tanks alongside magical devices. The officer is incredulous and unable to fathom how this young man managed to develop such an advanced settlement in just over 10 days, and he even accuses Takumi of resorting to magic, an accusation to which Takumi makes no attempt to refute. As the new city is unveiled, a few refugees murmur doubts about whether they can truly thrive there. At the same time, Sophia approaches Mani, puzzled as to why she appears alone in her new home. Mani explains that her husband died back in their old village, so Sophia sympathetically remarks that running a farm solo must be incredibly challenging, and she inquires if Mani might be interested in taking on a different kind of work. When Mani remains silent, Sophia vows to consult her master about potential opportunities. Mani is surprised to learn that Sophia even has a master, and Sophia explains that this master was responsible for constructing the settlement. And given everyone's busy schedule, he might even need someone to handle cooking or similar tasks. With that, Sophia heads off to speak with Takumi, promising to return later to check in on Mani. Hours later, Takumi presents Mani with an offer to work for him and attend to his needs in exchange for a salary to be negotiated later. As the proposal sinks in, memories flood Mini's mind, recollections of hushed conversations in the carriage about how one should no longer trust the nobles, and bitter recollections of how her own husband perished at the hands of the rich's greed. Overwhelmed by the fear that history might repeat itself and lead her into further despair, she adamantly refuses, confessing that she cannot bring herself to trust Takumi. Maria tries to reassure her that Takumi is not like the other nobles, but Takumi ultimately decides to set aside the offer for now. After the meeting, Mani feels that she can no longer remain in that environment. She fears that her blunt honesty will only invite persecution or worse. In a swirl of conflicting emotions, she wonders if her outburst was simply an unconscious expression of justice, a way of venting the deep-seated pain inflicted by the aristocracy, or perhaps just a desperate attempt to express her long-held frustration at being powerless. Lost in these thoughts, Mani is suddenly ambushed while making her way toward the forest. Immediately, Maple races off to alert her master that a horde of monsters is invading the territory. In response, Takumi quickly consults Dorn the escort officer and orders that all bridges be raised and every resident shielded. Takumi asserts confidently that no monster can scale the wall, and that Nolan's wings will take care of any enemy lingering outside. Meanwhile, Mani scrambles desperately for shelter behind the protective wall, but tragically fails to reach the raised south bridge in time. Concern ripples through the community as residents inform Maria that they haven't seen their friend. The only clue is that she was last spotted heading through the south bridge. Worried, Takumi summons his entire group, and soon they are all transported outside on the mighty Great Titan. In the ensuing chaos, we find Mani cornered by two monstrous wolves. For a brief grim moment, she contemplates that perhaps she was destined to meet her end in this very place. Just as the wolves are about to sink their teeth into her, Takumi bursts onto the scene with his halberd, swiftly dispatching the beasts. After the skirmish, Mani reports that many other monsters are still roaming free, but Takumi remains unconcerned, confident that these threats will not prove insurmountable. Just then, the rest of the group returns, reporting that all remaining foes have been vanquished. Takumi, with a playful smile, jokes that they truly are the best crew around. As she listens, Mani notices that Takumi has sustained an injury. Without hesitation, she quickly tends to his wound and apologizes for her earlier harsh words. Takumi, however, simply shows his relief and gratitude that she wasn't harmed. After all, he is determined that no villager under his protection should ever be injured, as he dreams of a peaceful life for everyone. In that moment, Money begins to see that this young man is nothing like the corrupt nobles she once knew. He is kind, genuine, and truly magnificent. Realizing it may be too late to turn back, she confesses her heartfelt desire to serve him as he had previously offered. Takumi gladly accepts her into his fold, and the other girls chime in to welcome their new comrade. Meanwhile, back in Bolton, Dorn reports to Godwin the resounding success of Takumi's efforts in establishing the new settlement. Brimming with pride, Godwin muses whether this thriving town might serve as the vital cog in their grand plan. Elsewhere in the sacred empire of Sidonia, the king receives a letter from the kingdom of Traeria. The message states that a fortress town with a formidable castle has suddenly sprung up on the undeveloped lands near the kingdom of Barcula, and that the knights dispatched there were sent from Bolton. The letter also hints that the Alchemist might be involved, a move that could be interpreted as an indirect probe by the Empire of Sidonia. In response, Elizabeth decrees that the kingdom of Barcula can no longer be allowed to dominate the region. Sidonia must assert itself as the sole ruler of the continent. When the king questions her meaning, she explains that the time has come for a decisive counterattack. Returning to Takumi, he inspects a well-traveled road, considering its potential for trade once Mani brings in the lunchboxes the master requested. Suddenly, an explosive surge of energy bursts forth from within a rock, channeled through a fissure and blasted across the continent with overwhelming force. The shockwave blinds and terrifies the wings of Nolan, which had been far from the source. Maple comments that he sensed a very foul mana emanating from the blast, and Sophia's intuition confirms that something is dreadfully amiss. At that moment, Takumi recalls that Nolan had manipulated time when summoning him to this world, sending the Alchemist back a year before the heroes were even called, and that it has now been exactly 1 year since his arrival, meaning they have finally reached a pivotal moment. In the midst of these stirring events, Akira, Yamato, and Akane appear in the mysterious Hall of Sidonia, where they are warmly greeted by Elizabeth, setting the stage for the next chapter of their epic saga. 3 months have passed since the hero was summoned, and all have now ascended to A rank. Ever vigilant, Nolan senses that Sidonia will soon take action. As if on cue, Elizabeth gathers the heroes for a crucial announcement. With a blend of anticipation and gravity, she proclaims that the time has come to unveil the world's new champions. To showcase their strength, she intends to lead them on a journey across the continent. Akira and Yamato are thrilled at the prospect of venturing out and being hailed as heroes, while Akane, though clearly uneasy, masks her suspicion and pretends to share their excitement, so that neither Elizabeth nor did King become aware of her doubts. Meanwhile, we see that the village that Takumi built has been christened Wedgefort and is thriving, with merchants and craftsmen moving in to launch their businesses. The prosperity is palpable, a testament to his vision and hard work. Outside the village in the forest, Sophia is busy slaying monsters. After she cuts one in half, a nearby maple calls out to her and proudly displays the creature she captured. However, Sophia instantly recognizes it as a bush lizard, a creature she'd seen before, and her heart sinks as she realizes that the monsters in the area seem to be growing stronger. Alarmed, she reports her findings to the others. Many offer to help with the exterminations, but Sophia insists she can handle it on her own. Her worry stems not from the task itself, but from the sudden inexplicable surge in the monster's strength. She speculated that these monsters were being driven out of their natural habitats for some unknown reason, and she couldn't shake the thought that the dramatic mana fluctuations they had experienced 3 months earlier might be behind this change. After all, if that surge of energy was significant enough to catch their attention, it likely had a profound effect on the local wildlife as well. Amid these unfolding events, Takumi, recalling Nolan's words about the heroes being summoned, knows he must proceed with extreme caution, even as he remains uncertain about what to expect next. Later that evening, Dorn informs Takumi that Barak urgently requests his return for a new quest. Agreeing to head back soon, Takumi first inquires with Dorn about any noteworthy happenings in Bolton during his absence. Dorn replies that nothing significant has changed, except for a rumor circulating about 3 new heroes emerging in the Empire of Sidonia. Back home, news of these supposed heroes quickly sparks a lively discussion among the group about the implications of their summoning in Sidonia. While the others, unaware of the true nature of the hero summoning, Maria speculate that Nolan must have brought these champions to Sidonia in an effort to remedy its past misdeeds. But Takumi remains cynical because in his eyes, Sidonia is still as rotten as it was when they once tried to kill him, and all he can hope for is that these newly summoned heroes turn out to be honorable. On Sidonia's, we see that unfortunately reality proves even harsher because Akira and Yamato have now earned a reputation as certified scumbags. Then as the group prepares to board their carriage, Yamato sneers, questioning whether they truly intend to bring along that filthy demi-human. Lulu attempts to apologize for offending him, but Yamato is quick to dismiss her, outraged that she would even dare speak up. Akane immediately stands up for Lulu, asserting that Lulu is her personal attendant and should be treated with respect. In response, Akira spits that demi-humans are nothing more than slaves. Despite the tension, Akane's fondness for Lulu convinces him to allow her to ride along with them. Just before departure, Elizabeth and the king gather the heroes to pray to Anat, invoking divine aid to ensure their success in battle. Even if Anat wasn't once real, in this moment she has clearly become an active force. Upon returning to Bolton, Takumi and his party consult Hans for any news on the heroes reportedly summoned in Sidonia. Hans reveals that the group consists of 2 boys and 1 girl, and they all have black hair, which leads Takumi to suspect they are Japanese like himself. Hans adds that these heroes are supposedly on a mission to visit every church in Barkula, though he hints that this is merely a cover for their real objective, likely to demolish the churches of Nolan. In any case, Hans informs Takumi that Papek has requested his party to escort him to the royal capital, and since it's a request from Papek, Takumi agrees to the mission without hesitation. While everyone is busy preparing for the escort mission, Money approaches Takumi with a hopeful request. She wants to join the team. Takumi hesitated at first, explaining that escort missions were perilous and given her limited combat abilities, she might be at risk. Mani understood his concerns but confessed that remaining in the mansion, isolated while everyone else was out on dangerous errands, made her feel unbearably lonely. Seeing her genuine distress, and with Maria and Sophia echoing her sentiments, Mani pleaded with Takumi to reconsider. She reminded him that she could wield earth magic, so she wasn't completely defenseless. Her earnest, pleading eyes made it impossible for him to refuse. In the end, Takumi agreed to let her join the mission on one condition. She must stick close to either Maria or Riva at all times. Overjoyed by the decision, Mani promised to do her best, though they would need to register her as an adventurer later. Meanwhile, as the heroes made their way toward Barkula, Yamato and Akira grew increasingly frustrated by the jarring bumps of their carriage, which lacked any form of suspension. Akira mentioned that he'd heard of a carriage with suspension invented over in Barkula, and expressed a strong desire to get one for himself. Not stopping there, he also joked about the abundance of elves in Barkula, suggesting to Yamato that they could even bring some back for their amusement. Yamato readily agreed, until the knight captain reminded them that Barkula had strict laws against exporting slaves. But neither Akira nor Yamato cared about such regulations. Being top-tier adventurers well past level 30, they felt untouchable by any law on this continent. Hearing their cavalier attitude, Akane grew deeply troubled, determined to prevent any further trouble from erupting, especially now that they were headed for the royal capital of Barkula. Akane resolved that she must do something to rein in their reckless behavior. A few days later, having successfully completed his escort mission, Takumi arrives at the royal capital. There, the receptionist announces that he, Sophia, and Maria are being promoted to A rank status, while Reva is bumped up to D rank. As she calls for their guild cards to process the promotions, a sudden uproar erupts at the back of the guild hall. The heroes have arrived, making an enormous scene. Akira barks for everyone in the guild to clear out so he can push forward. When a guild patron dares to speak up, Akira viciously gut punches him for no apparent reason. As if that weren't enough, Akira and Yamato soon spot Takumi accompanied by his beautiful slaves, and they dismiss him as just another insignificant adventurer. In a show of arrogance, Akira demands that Takumi immediately hand over the women. Irritated by their insolence, Takumi refuses. Still keen on avoiding an all-out brawl, he tells them to leave him be, but Akira's inflated ego won't allow him to back down. He draws his sword and charges at Takumi with lethal intent. But with effortless skill, Takumi dodges the blow, then uses his alchemy to destroy Akira's sword, and when Yamato attacks next, Takumi simply flips him onto the ground like it's his rightful place. Witnessing this, Akane is left astounded that Takumi could defeat both adversaries so easily, while Akira, devastated by the loss of his sword, threatens that Takumi will regret this encounter. Calmly, Takumi retorts that Akira is in no position to issue threats, pointing out that he just got his ass handed to him, and that drawing a sword inside the guild is a major offense that will only land him in deep trouble. Though Akira begrudgingly accepts Takumi's logic, he vows to exact revenge someday. Once the two troublemakers withdraw, Akane rushes up to Takumi to apologize on behalf of her fellow heroes. Takumi reassures her that she isn't at fault. In that moment, Akane introduces herself, her intuition whispering that Takumi is the person she's been seeking. But before she can say more, Lulu arrives, urging Akane to leave. Sensing that Akane still has something unsaid, Takumi leans in like a gentleman and tells her he'll be waiting at the lakeside hotel that night. Later that evening, Takumi recounts the entire debacle to the girls, lamenting that those so-called heroes don't even deserve the title given their crude behavior. Yet he notes that the young woman in their group struck him as decent, hence his invitation to meet at the hotel. Now, however, he frets over how Akane will manage to slip away from her Sidonia escorts unnoticed. Sure enough, it turns out she did get caught, and soon she finds herself on the run from the Sidonia guards, with Lulu by her side, all in a bid to meet Takumi. The guards close in on Akane, but just then Sophia appears and swiftly knocks one of them out while Maple drags the other away. Soon after, Sophia escorts Akane to the hotel where she meets with Takumi. Once inside, with no Sidonia guards in sight, Akane cuts to the chase and asks Takumi if he is Japanese, although Takumi initially tries to dodge the question, fearing that such information might leak to Sidonia, but Akane vows she won't tell a soul. Convinced that she can be trusted, Takumi admits that he is indeed Japanese and reveals that his presence here is connected to the recent summoning of heroes. His party is taken aback, as this is the first time they've heard him mention anything of the sort. Realizing there's no longer any point in keeping the secret, Takumi gathers everyone and demands they promise to keep this knowledge confidential. Once all agree, he launches into a detailed account of everything that transpired before he was transported to this world. He half expected them to dismiss his tale as a lie, but to his surprise, the girls find it entirely plausible that he hails from the same world as the heroes and is acting on behalf of Nolan. Based on Takumi's revelations, it becomes evident that Sidonia is the true villain here. The fact that the heroes have been summoned only deepens the threat. Akane then inquires if Takumi believes Sidonia intends to wage war on the neighboring nations. While such a scenario is within the realm of possibility, Takumi points out that neither Akira nor Yamato are strong enough on their own to launch a full-scale war. Instead, it's far more likely that Sidonia intends to use the heroes to incite the masses into starting a war. Even if a war doesn't break out, the mere presence of the heroes could spread the influence of the Church of Divine Light, which is equally concerning. Akane apologizes profusely for dragging Takumi into this mess, but he reassures her that it's not her fault. After all, they were all summoned here against their will by Sidonia's machinations. Then turning to another point, Takumi wonders why Akira and Yamato, if they too hail from Japan, behave so despicably now, when it's hard to imagine they were ever like that before arriving here. Akane shrugs, admitting she doesn't know exactly what changed them, but she recalls that both Akira and Yamato were kind-hearted individuals before they began their training in Sidonia, after which their personalities underwent a drastic transformation. Takumi finds it all very odd, so he asks Akane if they were ever given anything unusual to eat, but she has no idea because she'd never trusted Sidonia from the start and always cast purification magic on her food before eating it. But Akira and Yamato, not being as proficient with light magic, might have been unknowingly drugged or even brainwashed at some point. Overwhelmed by the thought, Akane falls to her knees before Takumi and begs him to save her and Lulu, insisting they can't go back to Sidonia after what has happened. Takumi gently chides her to stop kneeling, assuring her that he would never abandon a fellow Japanese girl, and suggests they head back to his mansion in Bolton for now. A short carriage ride later, everyone arrives back in Bolton. To lift Akane's spirits, Ria prepares a hearty cream stew. The rich aroma and taste astonish Akane, something she hasn't enjoyed in ages, and she is so moved that tears stream down her face. Meanwhile, over at Wedgefort, a guard on the wall notices unusual activity in the forest. Upon closer inspection, he realizes that a monster stampede is underway and rushes off to sound the alarm. Back at Takumi's mansion, as night falls, Akane and Lulu have already gone to bed while Takumi is busy in his workshop with Riva. He plans to discuss Akane and Lulu's situation with the king later, but for now, their safety in his mansion is assured. Seizing the moment, he calls all the girls together. Once assembled, Takumi makes a bold announcement. He is going to dissolve everyone's slave contracts immediately. The girls are heartbroken, fearing yet another abandonment, but Takumi quickly clarifies that this is not a bid to leave them behind. Facing ever greater dangers ahead, he wants them all to stand with him as equals, true members of his family, and free from the bonds of a slave contract. With that, he dispels the contracts. Energized by the newfound unity, he returns to his workshop and manages to finish crafting 2 legendary swords he'd been working on. However, before he can test the blades, a notice from the guild arrives. Reading the details of an emergency in Wedgefort, Takumi is horrified by the scale of the disaster, and the stakes have never been higher. Takumi and his companions waste no time and head straight to the guild, where they find the Lion Fang party and the guild master already assembled. Upon their arrival, Takumi urgently asks about the situation in his newly settled town. He quickly learns that a massive stampede of monsters is rapidly approaching. In response, the knight captain has requested the guild's strongest adventurers to help defend the town. However, most of the high-ranking parties are currently away on other missions, leaving the town in a dire predicament. Takumi's concern deepens, yet the receptionist confidently assures him that the 3 parties being dispatched for the mission are worth more than 100 other teams combined. At the mention of 3 parties, Riel starts to panic because he clearly knows who the 3rd group is and isn't thrilled at the prospect of dealing with them. Before long, the Crimson Rose, the notorious 3rd party, arrives. Their leader Marilda steps forward to introduce her all-female squad, greeting both Takumi's party and the Lion Fang group while deliberately ignoring Riel just to rile him up. The guild master then commands everyone to head to the new town and hold the line until the night order arrives. They promptly pile into Takumi's carriage, with Takumi leaving Akane and Lulu back at the mansion, and he even keeps Titan on guard. Inside the carriage, Takumi presents Sophia with the legendary sword he just crafted. He explains that he created a pair of unique blades, one designed to inflict brutal physical damage, which Sophia receives, and the other meant to inflict mental anguish with even the slightest scratch, which he plans to wield himself. Before long, the carriage pulls up at the outskirts of the new town. Confident that the tall wall will hold back the monsters long enough, Takumi is shocked to discover hundreds of winged beasts nearly scaling the wall, while even the ground-based foes have begun to climb. Realizing there's no time to lose, Takumi and his team immediately launch an all-out assault on the invaders, slaughtering them en masse to ease the pressure on the guards, who hastily open the gates for reinforcements. Once inside the city, the 3 parties divide up to tackle the monsters lurking within the walls. Takumi and his girls fight relentlessly through the night, gradually clearing their sector so that the villagers can finally emerge from their homes. Grateful, the townsfolk thank Takumi for saving them, and he assigns Riva and Mani to tend to the injured while the rest of his team reinforces the efforts of the other parties. Soon after, Takumi reaches the opposite side of town, where he finds the adventurers intently watching the forest from atop the wall. They point out with suspicion that the monsters are retreating into the forest all at once, a coordinated movement that seems far too smart for ordinary beasts. One knight explains that during the night the monsters behaved with unexpected cunning, launching attacks while the defenders slept and retreating swiftly if they sensed defeat. Takumi ponders aloud that there must be someone orchestrating their moves, though the adventurers find that hard to believe. He then offers a theory. Perhaps the energy wave from the hero's summoning has mutated or evolved some of the monsters, endowing them with a semblance of coordination. This idea resonates with everyone, lending a measure of credibility to his explanation. Meanwhile, on the other side of the continent, the Emperor of Sidonia learns about the monster stampede targeting the new town of the Barcula Kingdom. Seizing the opportunity, the Emperor considers this a perfect chance to weaken their enemy, and his daughter Elizabeth suggests that they also strike at Barcula's allies so that no help can arrive in time. Pleased with the strategic thinking, the Emperor gives his blessing to send his heroes to attack the neighboring country. Back in the town, as the injured are being healed, Sophia remains vigilant on watch for any more monsters. Suddenly, Riva arrives with her lunch, exasperatedly telling Sophia that Takumi is being an idiot because he's handing out all the healing potions to the wounded, and at this rate they won't have enough for themselves if the battle drags on. Sophia goes over to talk some sense into him, but Takumi shrugs her off, insisting that his plan is simply to avoid any further injuries. Sophia isn't impressed by his cavalier attitude, but she knows deep down that Takumi cares more for others than for himself. Determined to protect him at all costs, she resolves to put her life on the line if necessary. Soon, as Takumi gathers his team to discuss further plans to safeguard the villagers, Maple suddenly alerts him that the monsters are back. Everyone rushes out to face the oncoming horde, and Takumi quickly outlines their plan. Launch a barrage of wide-range magic to weaken the monsters, then close in for hand-to-hand combat. The team unleashes their most potent spells, and the enemy forces begin to falter. Suddenly, the monsters start retreating in an organized manner, leaving everyone baffled, until a massive dragon-like creature appears, devouring smaller foes and growing even larger in the process. Before long, a two-headed dragon bursts forth from the forest, launching an attack that makes it clear this beast is the mastermind behind the monster's coordinated behavior. The creature zeroes in on Sophia. In a split second, Takumi dives in to save her from being crushed, but Sophia, undeterred, decides to draw the dragon away by relentlessly harassing it with her attacks. The enraged beast chases after her, and its searing fire breath manages to knock her down. Fortunately, the rest of Takumi's girls arrive in time, quickly binding the dragon and then launching a full-force assault on it. In the ensuing chaos, an injured Sophia hurls her sword toward Takumi. Seizing the opportunity, he combines the power of his two magical swords and delivers a decisive blow that defeats the dragon. With the monstrous threat vanquished, Sophia collapses, prompting Takumi to rush to her side and heal her. Frustrated and worried, he scolds her for acting recklessly. She admits only that she wanted to protect him. Takumi, his concern mingled with exasperation, insists that she must not throw her life away. Just as he finishes healing her, reinforcements arrive with news. Most of the monsters have fled, and the remaining foes have been dealt with. Relieved, Takumi allows himself a brief moment of satisfaction, only to suddenly faint from having expended too much mana. The next day, he slowly recovers, surrounded by his loyal girls, though Sophia stands off at a distance, silently watching their cottage with worried eyes. After several days spent helping to rebuild the town, Takumi and his party finally head home. Upon their return, they celebrate with a lively barbecue party, though Sophia remains visibly downcast by earlier events. Our fool hero doesn't notice her melancholy, so Maria and Mani tease Takumi into engaging with her. He then approaches Sophia with a plate of meat and confesses that while he knows she was determined to protect him at all costs, he never wanted to lose her in the process. He urges her to remain safe and to continue supporting him as his partner for life, and an emotional Sophia vows to do just that. Shortly afterward, Takumi meets with the city lord to secure official permission to shelter Akini and Lulu at his estate. Lord Godwin grants his request, but then reveals grim news. The two heroes from Sidonia recently perpetrated a massacre in one of their allied countries. Horrified, Akini blames herself for failing to stop those brutes, but Takumi consoles her, insisting that the fault does not lie with her. Though Akini laments that she should have done more, she swears to herself that when the moment comes, she will stand up against those heroes and put an end to their tyranny. Later, Takumi seeks guidance from Lady Nolan, asking if she had sent him back in time to prepare for the threat posed by the summoned heroes. Although Nolan avoids giving a direct answer, she reminds him that the future now depends entirely on his actions. Determined, Takumi promises that he will protect this world because it holds too much that he loves. Satisfied, Nolan expresses her hope that he will become the greatest alchemist ever, believing that his success will ensure the safety and prosperity of the world. But this is where the Season 1 has ended. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon in the next anime. And remember to like and subscribe to the channel to make me continue.